Ah, yes, look, something has just arrived. And this is Vince. This is going to be part of Vince's new guitar. So I need to check in with Vince and let him know this has arrived. All the way from Toman. Now, Toman likes to use large boxes for small things. So everything has a lot of padding and not a lot of thing. What we have here, beautifully packed, is like a iPhone or something. But here we have the Shala. This is a bit where I open it and go, please let it be the black one I ordered and not a gold one or a silver one. Da, 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 da. Please let's get down to it. Da, 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 da. Whew. It's in there. Wow. Right, let's have a close up. Put it on here so you can see it. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is the Shala 3D bridge, as it's called. And it sits, as you can see, on two small posts, which it likes little wheeled posts. That's fine. It's quite a shallow bridge for being a shallow. Probably got a 12-inch radius, whether we like it or not, I can't remember. But anyway, the reason I bought it is because if you look carefully, should be able to, you won't see it, it's a little bit stiff. Please, wait a minute. It's going one way but not the other. It's trying not to go. That's not great, but it's done it anyway. So you can see it's possible to wind this roller saddle all the way to the edge, and equally this one all the way to the edge there, which means that at a max we have a bridge spacing, possible bridge spacing of, let me just move a few things around so I can do this with one hand whilst holding the camera. So we're looking at spacing of 57.5, say 57 spacing, right, which is about 3 more than your typical widest Strat bridge, or most widest bridges, and that's quite good because it means that between all 6 of these little Watsits I can balance out to use all of that space in as wide a setting as possible. So this wide, now what is effectively a widespread 6, obviously it's a 6 saddle bridge, this wider than average 6 now I can use to convert a 7 string down to a 6 string and not have to cut notches in a 7 string bridge. This obviously requires this as well. I'll show you from this angle. Yeah, it obviously requires, in the scheme of things, it's going to need a stop bar. And the point about the stop bar is it's going to be a 6, and if you compare the 6 of the stop bar to the new 6 on this bridge, the new wide 6, whatever, the actual spacing is quite a lot, well, it's 3 or 4 mil difference, which means that when the strings come up here, they're obviously going to spread a little bit to the saddle, but it's a tiny amount compared to well, there's no real alternative apart from we could buy a solid bar of some kind, manufacture a bar like this and then just drill our own holes in it, but might as well use this. I've used this system before, and you get, it's hardly noticeable, it doesn't affect play, the roller is very effective. And it, like I say, as long as this is free moving, then it works really well. The only downside, well, it's not downside, it's no more splayed, if you like, than the standard Gibson headstock, which some people freak out at anyway. But so what's going to happen is I'm going to take some mark on it, it's not too bad. I'm going to take the original Strat style bridge off the 7 string in there and probably fill the through body holes from the top side, just drill and fill them with some wood. They're not going to be good for anything after that. Doesn't matter if they're sticking through the back, I just want a flush surface on the top. And then we're going to drill 4 posts, 2 for this and 2 for that, in exactly the right positions, and then that's going to go there, or it'll probably go that way around. And then once we've got that on, what we'll then see is exactly what the spacing is over the pickups, and measuring that will give us the maximum pickup spread that we need. And that's kind of useful because if I look long and hard, I'll probably locate some 6-string blades that will do this job, despite being actually just not specifically for a wide 6, or even you know, I don't want to have to buy 7-string blades because they're quite hard to find, and the ones I found have a specialist in a way, so they're quite expensive. What I'd like to be able to do is to put 6-string blades. And I've done it before on a couple of, or one of the 7 to 6 conversions that I've done, and it played absolutely fine. But there are a limited number of 6-string blades that are gratuitously wide, and that's what I'm going to be looking for. But I need that measurement first. I didn't keep it from the original guitars I did a couple of years ago. But anyway, I'll find it once I've converted. We'll get on with the conversion part, and once it's converted, I'll measure it, and we'll find the target width for the bridge. The reason for that is it's better to put new pickups on than it is to play 6-string guitar over 7-pole pickups, which I've done it and it does seem to work, but it's probably not ideal, and you might notice some slight phasing sound, but then again you might not. So anyway, back again with the next stage of this in a bit. Okay, now hello. This is an interesting little undertaking. Let me first of all dump some rechargeable batteries on the top, and let me move a couple of important but nonetheless inconvenient pieces of timber out the way. Oops. Stay there. Then let me fill up this machine with some batteries, because I'm forever leaving the darn thing switched on when I leave the shed at night. I suppose there's one way I will never end up with those burned out batteries. Now I'm going to get my phone back because I'm going to switch it to offness. 10s, no problem, Ian, on the other one. Right, I'm going to get the tuner ready for this. Now, what we've got here is an Ibanez GRG 7221, made in China, 7-string guitar, and this has come directly from a music store to me. And the task here is, well, the reason this came to me is that Vince watched me do a setup on, or sorry, do a conversion on PV 7-string and converted it down to an ultra wide 6-string. I've done a couple of those for a couple of very happy customers, and Vince has always wanted one of those. So he got in touch and we kind of agreed together, or a good budget guitar to do this with would be this thing. And the reason why it would be good is that it has a flat top. It's got a bridge that we'll get rid of, we won't use after this point, but it's perfectly doable to remove this and replace this bridge with a shallow 3D bridge, which I've got over there, which allows the 6-string guitar to be spread as wide, nearly as wide as this, so that you get a new 6-string spread instead of the 7. And then we have a stop bar here, which keeps it working like a bit like a Les Pauli sort of thing. Now, the only thing there was a couple of things to take into account. First of all, once we've got this bridge positioned and fitted, then I'll know what the spacing of the strings will be, and obviously we'll lose a tuner up here, and we'll also get a custom nut cut for here to run on 6 strings instead of 7. So then what we'll end up with is the new bridge running 6, coming out of a 6 string stop bar. Now out of the 6-string stop bar, the strings are going to go very slightly like that to the ultra wide bridge, and then from then on up the neck to the spaced nut. once we've got that in place, then what I'm going to be able to see is what the actual width of the strings are over the pickup cavities, because it's probably better to get a 6-string blade. You can get some 6-string blades that actually work on this, work quite well with an ultra wide 6-string. You don't need necessarily to go and pay the more expensive 7-string rails. They're quite limited set of options in that respect. But so this is a really interesting one, because some people I know will look at this and go, "You're about to massacre a perfectly good guitar," they say, and that isn't actually true. If you have to bear in mind, this isn't going to sit where I want it. You have to bear in mind with this that what I'm doing is I'm doing something a customer specifically wants, and that is I'm enabling a particular individual to play guitar in a way they haven't been able to play up till now. And that's not you, and that's not you, and that's not you, and that's not you over there, but it is that particular individual, and that's why Vince wants this doing. Now, you might not want this doing to any of your guitars, but you're not Vince and your hands aren't as big as his. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you something that struck me as quite incredible when I first saw this guitar, or got it out of the box. I'm going to get my tuner and sort of stand it up there. Now, first thing that struck me about this guitar is that it has some pretty good pickups in it. Quite a lot of output from that pickup there, and then so the first thing that struck me was, hang on, there's 5 positions. 3, 4, 5. None of the blurb in any music shop, online or offline, refers to a 5 pickup switch. So we've got something going on here. Neck pickup only. I don't know whether this is, I haven't even tapped it with a blade, but I don't know whether this is just the neck pickup doing something in series, parallel. Yep. Middle one, everything on. And then bridge, we've got, okay, we've got one here and one here. So there's a strange combination. Now I've got a diagram somewhere on my computer which shows a modification that quite a lot of people have put in on their RGs, 7-string RG, or no, I can't remember, whatever. But there is a known modification that comes with a particular, or that you have to have a particular switch for, and this looks like it's got it, but it's nowhere has that been advertised, and you wouldn't know, if looking online, you wouldn't know you could get this guitar with this modification. So you've got a load of tones, which is great, but it's not certainly not as advertised. Every single advert refers to the 3-position switch, which would be your normal humbucking front, middle, bridge. Master tone works very well, volume very positive. So what I did was, the guitar came pretty much tuned, and so I took it at its word. Now I'm not a 7-string player, so I don't know what note this weird thing down here is meant to be, but let's assume that people have said it's meant to be a B. So I tuned a thing. Strings, it's hard to tune. Strings are not passing through the nut very well. B, okay. Now check this out. Sharp by miles. What I found very quickly is there's nowhere on this neck that this low B string is in tune. It's unplayable, literally unplayable, and I found that incredible for a new guitar. If you take a look down here, you'll see that there is absolutely no leeway that's going to cure that on this bridge. So to be honest, if I had bought this, I'm not a 7-string player, I've never tried it, but if this is how it's meant to be with a low B, then unless it is in tune somewhere on this damn neck, it's unplayable and it's not fit for purpose. So if I'd have bought this with the intention of playing it, given that it's sharp by miles, which means I have to drag this neck. This bridge saddle can't go back any further. It's almost vertical. There's a 90-degree, actually I lie, that's about an 86, 7 degree angle over the saddle at the moment. If I drag that any further back, first of all, you have to take the spring out completely. Secondly, it'll be going backwards. It'll be dragging backwards. I don't suppose that's a major deal, but you basically haven't got enough intonation room left on this bridge as it stands to get that B in tune anywhere. So, you know, you might say, I don't know, let's play a B or something. You might just get it to sound like something there. But doesn't just apply to the B, it seems to apply to everything else, but not as bad. So, you know, it's been set there because you can't really go anywhere else, but I wouldn't be happy with that at all. Just as a point of interest, and it's surprising because, funny enough, I've gone online obviously and I've had a look to see if anyone else has talked about this problem, and actually apart from one comment in a forum from somebody speaking English as a second language, there was one comment saying this not possible to intonate type of comment, and it's true. Sorry, I don't know what anyone could do with that particular note. Now, okay, so here we are. We begin the game. We have in front of us a beautiful maple neck, great big wide thing. That's going to now end up carrying 6 strings. We're going to get rid of all of this stuff, and I have to say there's no slow way around this, or there's no delicate way around this. We just have to take everything off. We have to take everything off. We have to ditch the bridge. We have to prep up the surface, and then we're going to have to start doing some measurements, some very precise measurements. This is supposed to be a 648 scale, and I mean the strings are even nicely wound on. Somebody's done a nice job in the shop or the factory. It's just, I can't live with that. If you can't intonate that, it's kind of effectively means the bridge is in the wrong place. Now I don't see how that could be a one-off on a guitar like this. Surely that's got to be part of the whole production run, and in which case, how the hell is anyone actually playing this thing? Because I don't know what, honestly, I don't know. I know there's something metal that people, was it gent or something, that people play where the lower strings kind of probably just make a kind of noise that I don't understand. But correct me if I'm wrong, I thought that it would need to be at least in tune somewhere on the neck, but I could be horribly wrong, and you guys may go, no idiot, you don't play it like that, you never have to play a note, it's meant to make percussive sounds only. I don't know, you know better than me. So anyway, Vince, I hope you're enjoying this so far. We're going to lose a tuner in this whole game, and I'm going to fill its little hole with, I know, a piece of wood, and that's going to get, I don't know, I guess I could buff it out now. I've got my buffer, anything is possible. Right, I'm going to take these and I'm going to straighten these out. Now the reason for that is not because I'm going to fob them off on some other unsuspecting customer, and not at all. You people have watched this long enough to know exactly why I'm straightening these out. It's so that I can reuse them for in the mode of sacrificial strings, and there's a pretty grain on there. I guess that must be some sort of roasted maple-y game going on. What do they call it? Lucifer? No. Crucifer? No, that's from Howl's Moving Castle. That's Crucifer. What do they call it? something acer, fire racer, no, you know, boy racer, burnt maple. Acer is maple, isn't it? So something acer, thermo acer, no, come on, carbon acer. There was a word for it. They called it, there was a trendy name. I think I saw Toman referring to it. I'll remember it in a minute. You all know what it is. You remember it. You've seen it. Something acer. New acer fingerboard. Alright, I'll pull these right through. They're too much hassle to try and straighten out. Yeah, so in the past, the one actually the couple I've done before were both with the same model of 7-string guitar, and as it happens, it was a model, a PV model that had a pick guard, and it actually had to begin with, it had a sort of Tune-o-matic style bridge, but the pickups were set in a pick guard, which in a way sort of made it a little bit easier, because if you replaced or built a new pick guard, if you wanted to change the pickups, i.e. in my case I used some Warman rails which happened to be wide enough, but it meant you could rebuild your own custom cut pick guard, and not have to sort of try and put like a filler or something in there, which we may have to do. Oh, that's nice. Out come the ferrules straight away. I didn't ask them to, but attached to the end of my string is a ferrule, and on this one too. Well, they aren't going to be any use to us after this, so there's no reason why they should stay in. Not that they would all automatically come helpfully out, which actually they are doing, so whether we like it or not, the ferrules are falling out. Of course, they don't, from a maker's point of view, they don't really need to be stuck in or anything, because the idea is that the force of the strings being anchored will keep them in place. However, it's a right pain if you come to change your strings, and unbeknownst to you, these little metal-y things, or I don't know what they're, metal or plastic, these little metal ferrules just drop out onto the floor, and if you live in my shed, before you know it, you've lost them. Are they metal? Yeah, they are. Okay, so I'm going to take them off and put them to one side, because they don't need to be here getting lost. I'm going to get also a container for all these bits. So this is quite a what's the word? Radical. That's probably a radical way to treat this guitar. But like I say, how else would somebody with enormous hands get themselves a playable guitar that they can play chords on? And it's all too easy to, you know, for us normal type people to forget that, you know, and so don't try not to have a judgment on what's going to be done to this thing, because it's not for you. Right, some interesting spillages have gone on this fingerboard. What's it called? Roseacre. I think they call it Roseacer. Rosicrucians. I don't know. Something like that. You know what I'm saying. I don't know what it's called, but it's a stuff, and they have a name for it. The stuff is called something. Roseacer. I think it is Roseacer. They've kind of kept the rose from rosewood, but they've put the maple-y bit and called it acer. Right, so we're going to call this GRG 72021 Ferrules. Ferrule. Okay, now what's going to happen here? What's going to happen? Let's just think about this. I am going to need to, let's get the bridge out. Let's do a little bit of looky-see first. There's going to be, I don't have a set plan for this, because it's probably about 2 years since I did the last, let's do this the right way, so let's slice my finger off. About a couple of years since I did the last one, so as I say, there's no plan on the cards that just takes me step by step. Here's our beautiful Shala bridge, our adjustable width bridge, and that's going to end up sitting there, and I can use most of the fingerboard width, which is great. Now, it's quite a low rise thing, so the first thing I just want to look at, point of principle, is how much higher or lower is it sitting than the pickups? Well, or actually more importantly, how much higher or lower is it sitting than the actual bridge that's on there? Well, in terms of functionality, it's probably close to that bridge's height as it sits there, but we know that it has to sit inside some smaller feet. Now these feet, as far as we're concerned, can be attached to this, or fitted in this guitar whichever way we darned well like. Is there another bit in here on my... I seem to be missing something. This is assuming you've already got a... They didn't tell me that bit. Right, I need some bushes. Ha! Anyway, the point is, all we need is to be able to wind this up and down. And oh, here we are. We have a little tiny bushing. Actually, this might even be better. It's very subtle, but actually this would sit in very low, and all we need is to be able to put this thing on top of there, and that needs to be flush to the surface, ideally. But we want a bit of up and down possibility, and that sitteth upon there like that. So all told, if I get my, I should probably draw this out on the board. If I get my measuring device, the distance between so let's say that sits on the surface, okay? The distance between that and the very top of the bridge, taking into account the rise and fall, I'd say is a total of 15 mils, conservatively. So I think I do need to write this down. You can stay there for a minute. Thank you. Ah! Did you hear that little sting noise? That was the thing taking revenge on me. I don't need those, that's all done. Right, for a little bit of my sketchifications here, we're going to go body of guitar, and then we're going to go the little thing, and then we're going to go on top of that sits the bridge, and then it sort of looks like that, and then it has a saddly bit at the top. And I'm saying that total max is 15 mils from the surface of the guitar to that. Now currently, it's kind of hard to say, but maybe I can peer. Or maybe I'll use this. Sort of have a quick look down there with a eye, and that is clocking in at the moment at. That's clocking in at about 12. Okay. So if I just draw the regular bridge underneath there, what's currently there, we got that little bit like that, a kick up at the end there, we got a thing like that there, sitting on little feet like that, and a springy thing going back to there, whatever. Okay, and currently we've got a 12mm rise and fall. So I guess what I'm saying is, to use this as designed, that would end up with us being 3 mils higher than it currently is, and that action was too high as it stood. So to be at a decent action, I'm reading 10, that should have been around 10. So we want the top of the saddle to be 10 at its most, and I would say it's going to need to be at, what did I say, 10 at the most, and probably 7 ideally to give us some up and down movement. Now that, at the moment we have, it's not very accurate way of doing this, but let's stick that like that. What I'm trying to find is its overall height. I've got the worst possible scale to measure against. It's shining and I can't see a damn thing. Okay, I don't even know what that mark is. That's 1, that's 13. Yeah, okay, so 13, the total height of the bridge is 13, and we wanted, that's currently at 10, sorry 12, so let's just draw it in red. We've currently got the string coming off at 12 there, which is too high. 12. This one we'd have the string coming off at 15, which was way too high. That one the string needs to be coming off easily. We don't want it at 10, we want it at 8. So we need to bring that down to 8, which we could do with this one. This goes quite low, but you lose the string break. But if this is currently 15, we have basically got to halve that, just over half that distance, to bring it down to 8 above the deck, and that gives us some up and down movement. Now, given that this is itself 13 mils, the unit is 13 mils tall, that means it has to basically, if it sat flat on the deck, it would still be, it's about 14, isn't it? Sorry, I'm thinking aloud here. If I drop that down, that one, that's 13, so that would be 13, and we still, that's going to be 5 more. So we have to drop this into a route. We have to drop it into a route that's going to be 5 mils. So we have, that's 10. Actually, no, it's going to be 7 mils deep route. So if I were to draw, I'm leaving that till tomorrow, but if I were to start with a 7mm deep route for this to sit in, then I can bring it up to the surface. I can, sitting on the bottom of the 7mm route, this will then, it will stick up. The whole unit is 15, so if that sits on the bottom of the 7mm deep, we come up and that leaves 8 sticking up over the top, and we can actually make this even deeper. I think this needs to be an 8mm deep route, just to be on the safe side. If it was 10, this would stick up 5, and we know that that's not enough, but then we can wind it up at least. How much can we wind it up? Let's have a look. Well, we can wind it up at least 8 or more. So actually, to be on the safe side, that route should be 10, right? And then we can come up as much as we like on the spinny things. But the only problem is with this little devil is because this has not got a screw slot on the top, we can't adjust this without getting to the thumb wheel. Oh, thanks so much. We can take it off, we can probably get in there and spin the thumb wheel, but we need a bit of space. So the point is that the route has to be bigger than the footprint of this, which is just slightly annoying. Now, how much wider does it have to be? How bigger? We can't do it from the back, it has to be accessed from the side, as you can see. So we need a kind of an overrun of, yeah, so why does anyone make a steel shiny ruler? We need an overrun of 10 to get our fingers in there to do the winding up. Down, counterclockwise up. Right, so I'm just going to draw that too, just as a start point. So our route has to contain the bridge. Actually, it doesn't need to be that deep, does it? Sorry. We need to contain the bridge in our route, and the bridge sits in there like that, with our wheels sticking off the ends that we can adjust like that, and our wheels off the other end like that. And that, you know, that's 10 deep and whatever the width of the bridge, and 10 each side. So we'll just get these measurements while we're playing the game. That is exactly, it's 83, but that's not with the bridge, the wheels on. So let's just put the wheels on and do the whole width before we do anything else. What I am going to do in a moment is I'm going to actually start taping up the guitar, because one of the things it's got to be protected. I don't want it to come out looking like it's been in the workshop for a year. I mean, it will have some, let's show me, it will have some marks. I mean, it's not going to be absolutely perfect, but I don't want it to be crappy. Okay, so that's the whole width of that is coming in at 88. 89. I think it's probably more like 90, but let's just mark it up as, let's call it 88 just for safety's sake. And that comes to there, which means if we're going to stick a 10 on each end, that's going to be 108 in total. Did I say 108 mils in total? That's the depth of our little route. And 108 millimeters wide by, well, we need to, ultimately we need to get in to access the screws, but they never need to be so low that they're hidden. So I think, given that we can drop that in, we'll have how much of that showing? Let's go back to 0, 9. No, we need to accommodate the screws into the route as well. That's a good decision point there, Captain. I'm going to call that, let's call it 20 just to give it clearance. So the total depth of the thing, so I'm going to draw the little screws on there on the back, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the total width of that is going to be 20 millimeters. And we know that it's going to be in a route 10 mils deep. Now, the fun part comes, actually, right, let's put these things back in the bag because that was a useful bit of measurements. The fun part is when we calculate the angle of this baby to the other baby, the bridge, and we need to have some angle in there. So I'm going to have to get it all figured out. Let's just do this manually. Let's not use a spinning thing for this. Yeah, so we're going to need to drop the stop bar probably a little further in as well. But again, we can kind of tidy up and paint in whatever it is that we you know, what we're not showing. Now this, obviously the overall footprint of this thing is going to be smaller than this Strat style bridge here, so we shouldn't. The challenge will be how, you know, what condition is under here, whether it's a nice condition finish or not, and in some ways the finish is going to be, it's going to have to be what it is by the end of this job. I mean, we'll obviously try and keep it as good as possible, but it's going to come under some handling one way or another. This is not helped by the presence of this saddle pushed all the way back thanks to the dinghy. Are they the same? They're pretty much the same. Yeah, this saddle's pushed right back for intonation, and so it was just about getting in the way of that screw. Okay, now before I take this off, I don't, in doing this, don't take for 1 second that I believe that anything about this guitar is in the right place, because of that intonation issue that I've already mentioned. I don't believe it is, but I'm going to start. Actually, probably could have done that before, but let's just, while we got it here, let's cover up as much of this as is feasible. And I'm also going to want to do it, I'm going to cut me a square edge and just run up close to the edge here, and that allows me to just sort of mark where the bridge was, just for reference really, as much as anything. What I can also do is draw on this the nominal intonation mark where this thing was seated, and because I can pretty much assure you it's in the wrong place, and I would give the well, let's do it the simple way. Take this off for a minute. Let's go first, or low E, let's go and draw it all the way across in pretty much a straight line. High E, so high E, low E, low as in Rob Low, and then let's put a little line down here so I can see where that was, and then it moves. Ta-da! Okay, so under there, that's not a bad looking mess. No, it's not a mess at all, it's pretty tidy. I'm just going to cover this off. Really, it would be good to have a complete wrap around, and a bit like in a hospital surgery, only uncover the things you need to get at with the surgeon's knife, basically. But for now, I'm just going to go over here and cover up most of the surface. I don't mind this sticking on a good quality new lacquer like this. There should be no problems getting this off, and if it leaves any glue behind, then again it should be no issue getting this off with some solvent. I'm just trying to take all the important bits off. Now at some point I'll probably take all this out too, because to route something I don't really want these in, but I think I'll just leave them where they are for the minute while I kind of draw around with some tape. It's just random free form, doesn't matter really. All I want to avoid is building up any sort of knots of paper which will get in the way of the router. I don't want the router sort of riding up and down hill while I'm trying to dig these new trenches. So it's just whatever, as flat and tidy as possible, just to protect this. And again, I'll cover that further if and when I take the pots out from the back. Again, the same thing here, just straight down the middle, cover those, clean these, keep it clean. And then what I'll probably do is just do a little couple of measurements tonight, but after that leave it then till tomorrow, and we'll come back to it sometime later tomorrow and measure everything up a few times over, double check things, recheck the calculations, probably draw, just to be on the safe side, I like to draw a sort of scale thing out so I can reassure myself that I've not lost my marble somewhere in the visualization stage, and I very rarely do. There's some things I never get quite right. For example, if I try and calculate how to size a nut from below, and it just never works for me. Oh yo, right. That goes in the box. That goes in the box. Right. So, just out of interest, let's put a line sort of down the middle. Now down the middle is this centre point here, really. Obviously we'll pull that up when it comes time, but if we mark this as theoretically the centre string is, or centre is the midpoint there. Now I'll put this in the holder for a minute. Now what I want to do is just check what the scale length says. And again, I got this a bit off the other day when I checked this on my own Telecaster that I'm making, and it seemed to go quite a way off piste, but theoretically this is butted up to the end. We should be looking at a 6/48 scale, whether it's got 7 strings or 10,000 strings. And according to this, a 6/48 scale from here, from the edge of the nut down the centre line, roughly from the edge of the nut down the centre line, 6/48 scale runs, this is a visual, not a very accurate thing, but runs to about there. And that is interesting because it sort of tallies with the high E, really. You expect the lower ones to go away from that. But yeah, that's not bad. So maybe it's just not possible to intonate a low B like that. It certainly isn't. It certainly wasn't to the point that I would want to play the thing. Anyway, so who knows? Horrible sounding, horribly out of tune. Maybe the answer is that the bridge is in the right place. There just isn't enough physical adjustability possible in that kind of bridge, not without extending it by about 3 inches, and that would look pretty crappy. But at least you'd be able to get it in tune. Okay, well that's a by the by. It's not that important for right now. What I will do is I'll take down these as much as possible, so that they're kind of safely out of the way if I'm trying to run a ruler over the top of anything. It's going to be quite interesting if I do replace these, to consider what effect that's going to have on the wiring arrangement, because I guess as long as I got 4 wire, this doesn't want to go down that far, I don't think. As long as I got 4 wire pickups, then I should be able to just swap everything out, and whatever I put in will get the same switching arrangement from. That's the theory. It shouldn't require any extra messing about. Okay, so alright, for now I'm going to take this one off because I'm kind of I'll put another one on tomorrow to mark up more accurately, but for now that's not too surprising or worrying, that centre point. So what we've got, I'm going to make a little template to show where our right, just think a minute, we're going to need to go through. That's not going to go through there anymore, that's going to come through elsewhere, but I'm going to have to pull it back out. I guess what I could do here is cover this up, because we're going to need to draw, we're going to need to put the new bridge on there, and I obviously don't want to scratch it while I do that, so let's just leave our markers there, our markers, and we can go over the top for the time being of this earth wire. So in the true Strat or telly fashion, the earth wire is under the top mounted bridge part. Now here is what we're looking at with this little chap. So we're now going to have, so we've got a high E mark, so somewhere about here we're going to have our new bridge, and somewhere about here we're going to have our stop bar, and as we can see that stop bar is going to have to go further down, and it's going to have to go down in such a way that the strings can come up and not get caught on anything. So in a way what it suggests is there really needs to be a single route that encapsulates both these pieces for this to work correctly. That would be the logical thing. So just as a sort of just as a sketch, so there's our middle point. We don't want to go too far back because we're not going to have intonation problems. Now I'm just guessing at this position of the stop bar, for example, but so we're going to get the top edge there. We're going to need some room for the wheel to spin, but anyway this thing here is going to need room. Whoops, and we're going to sort of come back down here and then down here. So this is pretty much going to come out just past the pickup line. Okay, so I think realistically this does make the most sense, that we get. I'm just guessing this for now. We'll mark it out more precisely later, but eyeballing it, if we go here to here like that, and the edge of that, and they should be aligned together, so we could probably just follow that line on the edge. We're about 4mm out from there. Can't do the same on this because of the switch being in the way. Let's just press it down and call it there. join it up there, and then let's do a couple of midpoints just for fun. It's not a midpoint, it's just a reference point that I can draw a line off like that, and that's pretty much something like that. Yeah, I think that's about right. Okay, I went too far. I'm so sorry. Right, so that tells me, excuse me, pretty much straight away that we would be better off with something of a, it's great, you can just keep ladling tape onto here and that's it. So I'm going to take a picture of this. I'm going to say, here is our what's it, our bridge sitting in its little slot. Now what I'm going to work out in 3D, not now but later, is whether our stop bar and our bridge can live on the same level, or whether we need a two-step level, because it might necessitate going lower. So it could be dictated, the depth could be dictated by the stop bar, and then the bridge can go up on its legs from that point onwards. So I'm going to take a picture of this now so I can show Vince the progress and show you what's going on. Yeah. Then I'm going to call it quits for today. That's it. Or maybe a long shot. Come on, long shot, long shot, long shot. In progress. Of course I can take the stills off the camera. Right, I'm going to call it quits there. Oh, pull off the thing there. I've got, it's over there. I'm just going to show you, there's my workings, like my exam board workings. Just pull these back a little bit, keep it all tidy. That can go in there, these can go in there too, and we'll come back to this tomorrow. This one, alright. Time to finish. Hey, hello there. I'm ashamed to say I jumped ahead. It was pouring with rain. The card was indoors, the memory card was indoors, and I just got stuck into it because I had the router ready. What I've done is I've taken off this great lovely neck, and I've used my special template, custom built template, to route a 2-degree curve into that neck pocket, which turns it a bit more into a Les Paul kind of guitar. And I'll show you, if I can, what that does. Maybe I'll pick you up and carry you over here. Hold on. Fly. There you go. That's a bit extreme. Right, there's the angle. You get an angle in the neck. See, it's 2 degrees exactly, and that lifts the string up. Hang on, let me just put you back up here a minute. That lifts the strings up higher to meet with the bridge, and that means we don't have to sink the bridge in a huge hole. And what I've done in the meantime is I have positioned this perfectly, drilled 2 holes, sunk this in. Same for these. This one has a little bit of metal resin holding it in place because it needed to be a little bit wider to go. There's so little leeway in these pieces, you don't get any, it's kind of done computer precision, so if you drill by hand it's very difficult to get the same precision. But anyway, there we have it. That's our bit done. So we're going to have that ready to play, and this means we can go up and down on this here bridgey thing as high as we like, and the strings will come up from the stop bar there. So that's our new bridge arrangement. So as you can see, I've had to take the whole of the pickups, or all of the pickups out. Once this is dried overnight, what I'm going to do is put the pickups back in, put it all back together again, rewire the pickups, or sorry, rehook them up. To get them out, I just cut them basically off this switch, but having done that, I know which wires go where, so I had plenty of spare wire. So I'll put them back in there. I'll take that switch out and wire them back in, put the switch back in, and then we'll put it all together and play it. Test play it and set it up and see whether the frets need any work or not. I'm not sure they will do on a very flat radius guitar like that. Chances are we might get away. Anyway, sorry to not show it to you. I'll show you all the rest, I promise. I really do. Now I don't have a lot of battery power here, but might as well just get going. And you are now officially attached to the door. And I've got a little bit of a buff to do on Vince's conversion. Now, this isn't a perfect. Good? Yes. This isn't perfect. Like a lot of things, you can get a fairly good flat finish, but when you drill some holes and fill them, you tend to have a little bit sticking up, and it's really hard to tap it all the way in so that you end up being able to fill with black. And anyway, I'll kind of touch up those in the end. But here we go. Let's just try one thing. Well, let's just do this. Okay. Is it? Yeah, there we go. Price to pay is that you lose some of the black on the metalwork. It literally polishes it off the head. And that's okay, I can touch that up as well. So that is pretty good. I'll just give it a little tiny bit off there, but you can see it's now shiny, apart from one little spot there, but all that's missing is the touch up with a bit of black. Positive revelation. So what we're going to do now is just switch over to the other wheel, the softer wheel. This one's now got a hint of black paint on it, which I'll probably need to buff off on a test piece or something. But it's a fantastic piece of kit, really is. Like I say, I ideally should have. I kind of did it the wrong way around. I should have done the repair first and then fitted the bridge post, but unfortunately it was too late because I already went the other way round. So the bridge posts are in there, but I can touch them up. They don't move or do anything, so I can touch them up with a dash of paint and they'll be fine. Or even marker pen. It doesn't really hardly matter. Bits of, they're brand new, those wheels, so you've got bits of fluff coming off everywhere. So we've probably pulled it out a little bit further, but bit of paint from the metal. I think it could be, oh no, it is from the metal, but okay, this is obviously that side's covered in sticky tape yet to be removed, but in principle that's our buffed, repaired area, and you can see it, but it's a lot less noticeable. Now what I'll do now is I'll just touch these little bits up with black paint. Yeah, I had a difficulty to get into some of these because of the fact that the posts were already in there, which I say is probably the wrong way around, but hey. So this is all fine. So that gives me that ready to touch up and then go over tomorrow with, go tomorrow to put all the electrics back in, and we're ready to go in 7-string mode. There you go, how about that? Quite a useful thing to see. Battery's about to run out, so I just thought I'd show you the wheel in operation. Now I want to buff a load of other things. Hello there, back with the 7 to 6 string, and I kind of missed out, I haven't shown you on video the sort of repairing, fixing, changing bridge stuff, because it's one of those things I end up doing offline. But here we are getting ready to reconnect I feel like a crab doing this, reconnect this, or re-solder these bits and pieces here. So I chopped these off deliberately. No, well, I didn't check which way in that goes. It has to go that way, back to front. So But this is a little bit tricky to solder outside. Let me get this old stuff off first, and then what I'll do is I'll then do a bit of looking to see how easy it is, or otherwise, to where we can solder this next bit. I don't know if you can see this, not a brilliant picture, but okay. So we've got an earth, a ground here. We've got 3 different things which are all a bit sort of difficult, and actually 2 of them really close to the other, so I really don't like the look of this. Let's get the ones off that are far enough away to actually do something to them. One, and we'll pull the other one the other way to avoid any spillover like that. Okay, so we know that's ground, red and white, and same here on this side, but again we'll reverse it, so we'll get rid of the white, red, bridge, neck, cap. It's quite neat, they've labelled these little circuit bits here. These are so close together, these blobs. We've got to be very careful in putting this back together, like we haven't normally, but there's not a lot of room and it's too easy to get this wrong. Okay, so that's the only thing I disconnected. Now obviously, in order to make this work again, we have to get this back in the right place. So that's okay, that's fine. Is that right? Yeah, that will go there. So it is that way out, and so we'd be switching bridge, neck. I think that's that way. It's got to be that way around. Okay, so obviously what we can't do, I've got a couple of, I kept all the what sits on here. What we have to do is we have to get this part of it, let's get these 2 back in, the 2 pots back in place. Mini pots, standard sort of relatively low price stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wiggle that one back in place first. Here's my finger to hold it steady, so you can't see this from here. It's never a graceful look. And we'll tighten it up afterwards, and then we'll put this one in. These little quite gripper washers are quite good, and sort of dig into the finish and kind of keep the thing where you want it to be. as you can see, the buffing took some of the black off these bushes here, which I think what I'll do is I'll probably put a very thin layer of black lacquer on them, because they're not going to move or go anywhere, so it doesn't really matter. Now I'm just going to drop the, actually no, what I'll do, I'm going to drop that in there loose for a second. I'm just going to tack this on, and I don't have any spare usual stuff, so I don't like this. I'll use a screw for a second, wherever they went, a single screw. Yes, what was I saying? Yes, so I'll just put a little layer of lacquer on that, on those bits, because they'll sit underneath the bridge anyway. Now I'm just going to put 2 little screws in here. It's a temporary thing. I just want to, it's not probably even a very good idea considering I've got to get some wires poked through, but I'm just trying to, I don't want the switch to flap around. So the first thing I'm going to do is put the bridge back in, and bridge pickup back in, and I've already cut the ends, but I haven't tinned them, so let me just tin them before I shove them back through there, because otherwise they might get all spread out and something, I don't know what the word would be, but let's just hold that. Now I was going to do some spraying today, or I needed to do a bit of nitro spraying on Ian's telestrat thing, but the reality is it's come on you, it's the humidity is really high at the moment, and actually we've got some good weather coming in, excuse me, middle of the week, so I think it would make a lot more sense to hold off and do that. I just checked with him this morning, he's fine with that, but yeah, there's no point just doing it. It's going to be harder. It works, and to get it to work I have to heat up the shed and sort of force the humidity down a bit, and actually, okay, I guess, oh, that's interesting, straight through into the cavity. Sure is. Didn't really understand that did that. Now I'm going to put 1 tack in there. They use the same screws throughout. You know what? I've lost some. I think, have I lost some screws somewhere? No. They just used this. It looks like the same size throughout. There they have. That's kind of convenient, really, isn't it? You just do one size fits everything. And they're very low profile. They're just like little outline guards. Yeah. So anyway, so I'm not doing the lacquer today. I'm going to do that in the week when the sun comes out, and if the wind dies down at all, it would be really nice to be able to do that outside anyway. Just to, it just makes the whole thing easier, but it depends. To do it outside does depend on 0 wind, otherwise your lacquer just vanishes into the thin air, or should I say into the ozone, or other neighbours' living quarters. I mean, I sometimes when it's absolutely desperate, I do it in the shed, and I check out with my neighbours to make sure that they know I'm about to do it, and that they have a chance to close windows and hook up masks, breathing apparatus and stuff. So I'm just going to push this thing a bit roughly through here, because I need it to just get into place. Go on with you. This is these are the correct pickups, I tell you. It's kind of behaving as if it wasn't, or correct order, correct sequence, I should say. Okay. So in the house at the moment, what I'm currently doing is some stain and lacquer tests for Nick's Koa caster, and I'm using the African mahogany, which is forming the base of the guitar. I've already done the tests on the Koa, and I'm a sucker for amber every time, to be honest. I think almost, well, most timbers with those sort of amber stain on them tend to end up looking gorgeous, but that's just my personal preference. Okay. Alright, so out here we now have the correct pickup connections, or pickup wires, and we also then need to get this held tight enough to do the soldering. It's never massively easy, as you can see. Not everything kind of reaches everywhere without hitting other things. Nope. Sometimes these frustrate the daylights out of me. So that's, we could try and do this back front. See, no, I can't get in there. I can cover up that one, which to be honest, I don't much like gripping that there, but and then I cover this far end bit. Well, yeah, that'll do. Only trouble is I have to get over here to the neck part, and then the opposite side to the bridge part. But and if I turn it round, I'm not even sure how easy that would be. I'm very cautious of these bits here because they're getting, the more we move anything, the more stressed everything gets. Let's see if we can just hold it there. Okay, so we're going to go green over there, red over here. So first of all, let's snip any excess stuff we don't need. I'm going to put on my super duper glasses. They're pretty covered in dust as well. What's this on here? Stuff. Why are they so filthy? It's like, I don't know, if I hit them with, I think I've probably scuffed them with some lacquer or something in handling them. Anyway, they're only shed glasses. Let's come this way a little bit. Thank you. Right. Okay. Let's snip away. So we don't have a lot of room, and we don't want to have a lot of room, so we're going to go ground. So we'll cut everything to the same sort of size, small amount of wire. And the same here. I'll just cluster them together, and probably we'll get it in one go, but right. Okay, so we know what the order is. I've even written it down, but I know that we went in white, red and bare each time. So let's do the same in reverse, and let's sort of just position everything so we know it works. Bend it round. Okay, so we know this is bridge. Bridge is red is neck, bridge is green. Yeah, came through two separate holes. I ain't seen that before. Alright, bridge is green. We're on bridge side here. We go, oh, we're upside down, aren't we? E, daft person, white at the bottom. Okay, so this is where, this is my, I'm going to do something quickly. I don't often do. I'm going to install this thing here because I've got absolutely no room. Now, it's not ideal because we've got this cable in the way and the cooling thing is still over there, so can I locate quickly the metal thing the soldering iron stands on, because it was around here somewhere. Typical, and now I can't find it amongst all this junk. It was in here. Metal holder thing, the soldering iron, you know, the sticky up bit of metal with a little, it's not on there. It appeared to be on there, but then of course it doesn't make much sense to look with your silly glasses on that can't see anything. Do forgive me a second. Sorry about this. Okay, it's not immediately two hand, although it should be kicking around over here somewhere because that's where I plonked it. But it's resisting detection at the moment. Not even to fall on the floor. Right, well, that's not playing the game. Okay. Do we know what we've got? We're white at the bottom. Let's just try and get in there gently. Now, I don't have any room to do pressing down as well. See, that's really difficult. Dag nabbit, I just snapped it off. Sorry, I don't have a third set of hands to hold this still and to stop it moving, and my hands are shaking and it's created a crappy dry joint. Try it again. Don't move. Thank you. Breathe. There aren't enough hands in the day, if you get what I'm meaning. Now this one is a bit short on the solder, so I might just push this aside. Okay, that's loaded nicely. I need a really seriously steady hand to do this. Which involves not breathing. I need some beta blockers. That's what I need. Along with that other stuff. What is it the kids are all using now to study? I've forgotten the name of it. There's a name. Some concentration drug those little devils are using. Okay. One side. Hooked up. Next side, reverse order. In reverse order, see, I can't. Let's see if that will go in there. Yes, that will go in there. Let's see if I can. Look at my fingerprints on there, it's a mess. Spin this round to where one can reach it with one's hands. Something like that, yeah. There's good. There we go. Red, no, white down this end. Again, the ground has shed a bit of solder here. Now see those ferrules? I'm going to put the original ferrule pieces back in that hole, in their holes I should say, because right now they're not doing any good. They look a bit ugly, so I'll just put some glue in there and stick them back in. Breathe. Deep breath. Come on, transfer some heat in here, I tell you. Oh, get out of the way of the other one. Cool. Yeah, so I'll glue them and replace them, because I say they're not, those holes aren't doing anyone any good. Come on, down we go, up, on we go. Keep that sort of limited. I don't want it. Oh my god, my hands are boiling. Ow! That hurt. No, this is not a comfortable aspect. Let's try that instead. One ground, on you go. Sink you. And breathe. Ta-da! There we are. All things unloaded. It's very delicate. And we take this and we sort of wiggle waggle and get everything out of the way, in the way, back into the correct place. Now, bearing in mind you've got quite a long stretch of earthy wire going on here, ground wire, so we obviously, okay, where's the that's where they are. I thought I'd lost them for a minute. Yeah, there's quite a lot of ground wire poking out there, so we don't want it to connect anything, but conveniently, well, as it happens, this cavity isn't shielded, so that doesn't, wait a minute, they're in there, but these aren't typically the right sort of things. They've used one screw for everything, including, watch this, including this. It's not usually the kind of screws that you find holding in, come back, holding in switches. As you know, they're normally a sort of flat-ended, bolty looking thing, but anyway, it does the job. So yeah, if there was shielding in here, it wouldn't be a problem, because if there was shielding in here, these floating wires might connect the shielding anyway, but it's only earthing out. What we always have to be careful of is that nothing touches anything else. This pot here, kind of in danger of spinning around and touching the shielding, but it's not a real problem because there is no shielding, it's just paint. But I've found in the past, I could be wrong, but I found that even paint, lacquer I should say, inside cavities sometimes seems to conduct. I could be completely wrong, could be just making that up in my brain box, but oh, God, I hate it when the pot spins around. Oh, stay in one place, please. There should be a tool. There probably is a tool for this, by the way. That's not too bad position, but let's get in a place where I can actually grab a hold of it. Not much of a hold, actually. And that's going the opposite way. Yeah, so I've had situations where the paint or the lug of something has contacted, or the lug of a jack jack socket, for example, has contacted the inside of the jack socket tunnel, and I've been confident, for example, that there was no shielding in there, or nothing supposedly conductive, and yet it's grounded out, and caused a loss of signal. So you tell me, but it's a bit odd anyway. So look, I'm pleased to announce we're heading for the business. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cover this up, because that is, well, I say that it's done. Let's just do a sensible thing, shall we? Before we shut that door, let's do the common sense thing, which never hurts to do. Let's try the darn thing out. Yeah, absolutely. Volume, tone. Position 3 has both. Yeah, but position 4 has both, but in some sort of series parallel weird thing. I don't know. It's whatever that switch does, and I've taken a photo of that switch, by the way, because I'm just interested in its name and number, and I can look it up afterwards. But it is that unusual, very specific Ibanez switch that does a very specific job for twin humbucker guitars like this. That's quite cool. It's quite cool, and it's certainly more than you have any right to expect when you look online at the specs for this guitar, because it's supposed to be a straight three-way switch, but I'm not complaining. Because now, an interesting note in regard to the pickups. A commenter on Relost Guitars wrote in to say, sounds like the old TV, We've received a postcard from Mr. Smith in Blackburn to say, in his opinion, there should be no problem at all with 7 pole pickups and a 6-string arrangement. Now, he cites the example of a particular guitar, which actually, when you look closely at it, I think isn't a brilliant example of that, because it's actually a 5-string guitar, but it has how would you describe it? The strings actually fall between the pickups, but they fall equidistant between the poles, and that's fine. I get what he's saying, that, well, you know, they don't have to be sat exactly over the poles. Over Macho Grande? No, I don't think I'll ever be over Macho Grande. Anyway, so the idea is that he's kind of saying, look, it plays absolutely fine, and they're not over the poles, but actually the truth is they are between the poles equidistantly, which is different from what's happening here. Here you have sort of some directly over the poles by luck or sheer chance, and then I always waste too much glue. I'm annoyed at myself. Or you have some that are directly on, some are in between, some are a little bit off, and so on. Now that is I think partly, God, these are so loose, it's just ridiculous. This is going to put it on hold for a minute. What I can do, I should have done resin, really. But the thing about resin is it would have made an absolute filth mess of the top, because wood glue you can clear up beautifully easily from a surface like this. Resin, it isn't as easy. You need cellulose thinners, believe it or not, and that and poly finish often doesn't get along very well. So I would be, let's see if I can return some of this to the thing. But next steps with this guitar now, because I really do want to get this done today, ideally. I've got quite a lot on, so and I also, not least, want to get it back to Vince, who I know is excited to get hold of a guitar that he can play chords on, possibly for the first time ever. You know, and I think I've already made the point in this video, but some people, it's easy when you have standard sized fingers to lose sight of that fact that for some people chord playing is just an impossibility, and something like this, you know, I wouldn't do it for aesthetic purposes. You know, I'm not doing this kind of conversion for fun, or even because I think it's a sexy thing to do to a factory-made 7-string guitar. I'm doing it because I recognise that for some players, for some owners, it's literally the only way they will get to have a guitar they can play chords on, and I think I respect that need more than I respect any aesthetic consideration. Now, what I could do here, it's a slight impatience. What I could do here is just put a little tag of tape on here to keep these things in while I mess about. It seems a bit counterproductive. Am I doing the right things? Because I want to basically fit other things. So if I do this, thinks of the merits of what he's doing before he does it. If I do that, I've got a certain area to clean off afterwards, but what I can be pretty sure of is that's going to hold them in there. Now you watch them all pull out when I try and do anything else. So let's put the remaining pickup ring screws in. There's so many silly little words when you're doing guitars. Pickup ring fixing screws. Something, 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 something. Do you know what? I've got a feeling that what I've used for those, I'm looking at what's left in the kit here, we're going to be short 2 ring screws. Where they gone? It's not possible. No, there's one. Oh, maybe I'm not short of anything. Maybe I just haven't looked enough. Ah, you know what it is? Do you know what it is? Do I know what it is? Do you know what it is? That, the screw, the screw. No, that's what. Listen, this is all the tremolo stuff. I've got more than I need. That's what's the problem here. It's confusing me. Somewhere I have got one more small screw, and I appear to have misplaced it. That's all I'm telling you. Oh, looks. Right, I've misplaced one small black screw. Crapola. It could be. No, I haven't. It's in here, hiding in here. Shake it out, baby. Phew. Or as they say in certain places in South Wales, phew. I think I might have mentioned just recently I got some great advice on pronouncing shala. Maybe I didn't mention it on this video, but anyway, this is the video that it's relevant to. The bridge I bought is German made and is correctly pronounced shala, not schaller, which is how I say it, based down here in Devon, where everything's got a on it. Anyway, so it's a shala. And why was I saying that? Oh, there was a reason, I can't remember now. Yes, something about pronunciations, yes. I don't know, forgotten. See, I lost my train of thread. My train of steam engine. Okay, look, it's all looking very nice. Now, I did say, let's just try something. I did say that I was going to chuck some stuff on, painty stuff. You know the word I'm not looking for. Am I even dealing with the right thing? Yeah, I am. Here's the thing. It goes all the way in there. There's my little turny thing. So that, basically, once you've got the bridge on there, you just don't even see the ground, the bottom ring. So I think I'm not going to bother sticking extra paint on there for any reasons. Now, I think what's happened here, the reason these have stiffened up is that the buffing wheel has shoved a load of buffing crud in there, but that's okay. It still works perfectly well. It's just that it's less spinny than it was first time round. But we're going to have these standing reasonably up-ish with our shala bridge. Well, there it is. Look, it's coming together. And then we have these things. Now these aren't going to stand up, I shouldn't think at all. These should be flat on the deck. And yeah, look, you get a little shiny chrome bit of shine, but you know what? I'm going to leave it. It's just part of the construction process. To paint it will add a bit of a grunge to it that I can do without. Look at that, we are ready to go. Actually, having done that, I can go and, where the hell did I put the neck? Oh yeah, I can go and get the neck. And there is no reason now we can't attach this. But there is one crucial job to do, which I've conveniently avoided dealing with. And let's just, these have got some, what have they got? They got some stuff in them, buffing solutions, paper caught in them. Yeah, the one job I've overlooked completely, but you can join me on in a second, and that of course is fabricating a custom nut for this beastie. Now obviously when we lift this up, I don't want those things on there because they're just going to fall off. So hello, neck joint. Now you at this point can't see that very well, so look at my little things here. Now I'm just going to push those. Now remember, one of the things you've got to keep in mind, and it's not the end of the world, you know what's, there's another little tiny thing I'm going to do, possibly. I make not, and mate not, I make not and I mate. I can't get this out with one hand. I was going to say something I might do is there's some tiny cracking or loss of lacquer around the edge. It's so small. It's just what you get when you route a pocket, and there's lacquer involved because it's, you know, the router is a spinning thing. It's quite difficult to do anything like that without some breaking of or cracking of the lacquer. But anyway, so there is a little bit, and it's actually very minor, and I might just touch it up from the outside once this is together, rather than kind of do it and then wait for it to dry before reattaching the neck and so on and so forth, because I want to progress this more than I want to pretend it's a $1,000 collector's item. It's a working guitar that Vince wants to play sooner, hopefully, rather than later. I'm doing this left-handed, which is a bit of an odd one to do, but I'm doing it so you can see it. But it means I've got to be a little bit more careful with my target practice. And actually, before I do any kind of major tightening, I do like to check that it's sitting in beautifully level and everything. I think this is one of those rosacea, I think I mentioned it before, roasted maple necks, so that this probably doesn't have any problems with selling around the world. It's quite a nice look. Rosacea. I can't help but want to say roseacre. Roseacre! Which is a silly thing to say, really, but... Right. Now that's done up at a sort of a grade 6 on the old torque scale, and for my personal satisfaction I just like to add another little bit of hand tightening on top of that, just so I feel it's nice and secure. Sometimes with new builds and stuff that I make, sometimes the wood dries a little bit over time, a tiny bit, and if that's the case, sometimes what you get is you gain a little bit of tiny bit of additional, damn it, tiny bit of additional, I think I will undo this truss rod, this soldering iron. You get a little bit of extra turn back if the wood shrinks a tiny bit over time, but it's hopefully you don't, ideally you don't want that to happen. Right, so now we have something else to just do. Now things have changed, obviously. We now have a taller bridge than we had before. We've got a neck angle that's changed to accommodate that. What it means is the strings come over the top of here a lot higher than they would. So the first thing we're going to do really is we're going to want to crank up these pickups quite a bit more than they were the first time. I'm just going to do it by eye for a second, and then we'll see where we've got later on. But the bridge one particularly, the bridge one in particular is going to need to come quite a way out of its shell, but it's okay. They're designed to do just that, and that's just a sort of a quick eyeball. And we may even want a small adjustment beyond that. So this is, hey, welcome to the new re-engineered guitar. Like I say, the fills and repairs are not perfect, and I never said they would be, but they ain't too bad considering. And as with all things reloved guitars, my focus is almost always on the playability more than the cosmetics, really. Sometimes we have to sacrifice a little. Some folks would say we don't have to, but I don't know. Now I'm just going to take this cover off. The Ibanez has a cover designed so that you don't have to take it off to make an adjustment, which is pretty clever, but I'm taking it off in this case because I need to remove this nut. So just to show you, there's its clever, when it's screwed in, there's its clever little slidey sideways arrangement. And you open it and then do the adjustment, put it back, which is really neat. Now for me, I've taken this off because this nut and us are now to be parted, which always feels odd because it's like, oh, it's perfectly good, it's yeah, but it's got 7 slots, damn it. Is not what we need. So I'm going to do just a quick feel down here. Not a lot that's really going to make much difference because you can't really get into that space. So we're going to rely on the goodness of the hammer tap, just like that. Okay, after all that, I did a little check out of interest. there's a few online useful online nut spacing calculator things, and I kind of went and did a check based on one on the Manchester Guitar something tech site, and this is quite a useful little one. You put in your dimensions and whatever, and you get back the spacings, because I've never really known whether the spacings that people use are a sort of standard thing, or whether there's a bias, or some people have preferences or whatever. And my kind of logic for this one was, having put on strings before on guitars and found, just felt the bass strings just felt a little bit claustrophobic, I suppose you might say, compared to the thinner strings, and wanting to make a very minor adjustment for that, which is what I've done. And you won't be able to see it on the camera here, but I've done a comparison of the by the way, these frets have been leveled in the factory. There's an interesting thing. So this probably should play, I mean, I didn't find any chokes anyway the first time, but the action was quite high. Yeah, so I did a comparison, and it was very interesting because my bass bias is only, it's very subtle, and just, but it showed me that the regular calculation, funnily enough, seems to be done as an equal spacing, which slightly surprises me. I would have thought there would be some adjustment for string gauge, but hey, it's straight. It seems to be straight up according to that calculator. Anyhow, right. So this, let me just get this thing before we put any strings on. I'm just putting this one in for now, and I'm going to leave it on there while the other, the black one, things itself, dries up, dingies up. Anyway. Now this one down the bottom here I will do as a straightforward division when I position these saddles. I suppose I could do it now. What we want to do is we definitely want to use the widest possible spacement, so I'm sort of cranking them off to that side. Actually, I can't get any movement on that one at all. Right, now I can. So they're wound open as wide as they'll go. So this really is a fairly straightforward division thing, and you could actually do it visually when the time comes if you're making one of these, because you'll see the spacing. But I'm going to run with a, it's not exactly, it's not parallel exactly, but that's a 50, let's call it 58, and divided by 5. It's not that much. 58 divided by 5. 1 second. Again, you'll see that when it looks, if it looks wrong, you'll see. So we've got a kind of 11.6 spacing at the bridge. So if I just dial in 11.6 here, and then, whoops, a bit much, back up, come on, fraction too much, too little, there you go. So 11.6, so winding each individual one. They move pretty easily. Is that going to work then? Is that really? 11.6 is about widest you can get, and that's there and that's there. 11.6. Actually, yeah, it's about right. Looking at this spacing, so I'm just going to put them on, and we can make minor adjustments when the strings are on. So this is a quite a cool moment, because I'm now going to put on a set of strings. Now, if all is fantastic on this guitar, and we just not get away, but we get it and it plays with everything the way it is, I'm not going to mess with this if it just plays. Now obviously the action on the nut is going to be way high at the moment, but that's a sort of minor thing. But let's just see, we make sure we're running. This is a momentous moment. Momentous. So first string. Blue windy on thing. Like I said, we should expect some fanning out of the frets at the stop bar end as it fans out a little bit towards the bridge. That's what we are expecting that to happen. Okay, so I'm going to go on, I'm going to pull back. Yeah, just a little observation, that's definitely been levelled in the factory, which is a good sign. It's what more and more I've noticed seem to be doing, more and more manufacturers, because I think they've realised that with a basic fret level, but even if you don't do much more than that, with a basic fret level you can give the player or the owner the get my bridge on properly. You can give the owner the option of a really amazing action, which they wouldn't have normally on many guitars. Now I'm just looking at this, that's obviously off the mark there, and that's probably well, it doesn't look right until we tighten it up and then it sits better. Yeah, so it seemed to be quite rare that that actually happened, but now it's more common and I'm seeing it more and more, and so it's a very light fret leveling, probably done with a radius block, and then it's out the door without any complicated reprofiling or polishing. And actually, to be fair, it's a good compromise. You know, bear in mind that they really can't afford to spend lots of time. Oh God, get on the thing! Can't afford to spend lots of time, doing fine tuning, polishing to a really high standard, or even reprofiling. So what they do is, I guess, they opt for the best low-cost compromise in the circumstances, which is just to give it a fret level and go. And actually, I'm no criticism of that really. I'd much rather, well, it's better for any player that they do that than not at all. Wow, this is amazing. This is the moment. This is the actual stringing the guitar as a completely new type of guitar moment. Obviously, like I say, there's going to be quite a bit of work here on the frets, on the nut slots, to get this down to the right action, but it should be pretty easy. It's going to take a little while just to cut down with the file to get there, but yeah, look at that, ultra wide, fellas. Ooh. I'm just putting these all on first, and then we'll kind of get just a look at it visually. Then we'll just see whether my compensated, I don't know what you call it, that my bass biased string spacing makes sense, because I think it does, but hey, and I think at the most it's probably about 0.3 of a millimeters difference, really, something like that at most. But okay, I am on second to last string. That's good. Two away from the end of the headstock, which we know is what's going to be the case, because we've got an extra. Oh wow, this is cool. Now, extra big, wide spaced guitars like this look just weird, because by the time they get down here at the bridge end, it does feel enormous. One of the things that Steve Waterworth mentioned is that with a 7-string neck, for his liking, and I totally get this, that it feels that by the time you get down there, it feels a bit odd, and I think it's true. A guitar like this is a compromise. It's not it's not what you would do from the outset. You would make a wider neck, yes, but you wouldn't make it quite so wide down here. But it is a compromise, as you can see. But short of kind of if you're in that sort of stakes, then you'd be building the whole thing from scratch, including the neck, in which case you wouldn't bother converting from some existing guitar like this. But anyhow, this one, I think it feels like it has a little bit less real estate, kind of getting in the way down there. Oh, wrong one, see, look, fooled myself. The thing is, when I looked at this one first, with all of these, I was worried that what you don't want is too much room on the outside down here, so that you have to kind of reach for miles to get near the E string. It just doesn't feel quite right. But on this one, it doesn't feel quite as big a stretch as it did, I think, on the PVs. So there we have it. Oh, dun, dun, dun. It is born. the ultra wide 6 string. Now everything is doing what it should. We've got a blindingly low action down here at the moment. It's obviously not under any strain. We've got the ideal action. We've got tons of upwards adjustment room if we need it. We've got the strange sight of the kind of where these things sit with regard to actually, you know what, this kind of almost sits dead in between, like the bass that that guy showed me on Facebook. So that is interesting. Now what I'm going to do for this first thing is I'm just going to place a capo on here and just kind of crank these strings down to give us an idea of what we're really working with when it's down at a playing action. I'm going to just make it play for a minute. Now I think what we're seeing, okay, we're seeing a mismatch between the bridge. We don't have any individual settings here, so there is a definite mismatch between the bridge shape, radius I should say, and the bridge radius and the rest of the guitar. So it's not a perfect match. Now obviously I'm going to get stuck into these nut slots pretty quickly, but I think the thing we should do at this stage is we probably should get this into tune. And actually while we're at it, let's just demonstrate that it works with the strings on. Yeah. Got a mile high action at the nut, which is fine. Obviously can't play this because it's too high, but if we were to it's kind of hard to put this on too because that's not really going to work because it's too tall there, but okay. I like it. As I say, that the radiuses don't match, they never will on a replacement bridge. What you'll get is a slightly higher at the outside, lower at the outside, higher in the middle, funnily enough. But that's probably okay, probably not such a bad thing. Right, so it plays. Now we've got to take care of this nut, which is get off, off. Which is great. So we're on the sort of home stretchish bit with this, as you can see. So what I want to do is, with this pretty much tuned up at pitch, I just want to take a look and see what the neck is doing. Now I'm holding it at the first fret by virtue of capoing it anyway. And that's fair amount of curvature in the neck, in the relief curve, but I don't see any particular reason to alter it at the moment. Now people get all funny about neck curvature and they get into this whole thing of, well, if you set the action now based on that, when all you need to remember is a couple of things. First of all, your truss rod It's there to, its purpose is not to adjust your action primarily. You don't crank the truss rod with the intention of changing your playing action. That's not its primary purpose. Changing the action in the center of the neck is its secondary effect of cranking the truss rod, okay? But that's an important distinction, because so many people in fora advise other people that you adjust your action by cranking a truss rod. You technically, in using English language, you do, because if you crank your truss rod, your action will change in the center part of the neck, right? So if you want to sort of go to a court case and fight it out, yes, you could argue that linguistically that is correct, right? But in any sense of meaning and logic, it isn't correct. It's a secondary effect. You crank your truss rod to counter or accommodate the bending of the neck caused by the loading of the strings, right? That's its purpose, is to flatten it out or allow it to curve, depending on your preferred style of play or how you like it to feel. Obviously it can't play, actually these have been quite heavily flattened, these frets. That's quite amazing. I'll do some close-ups on my phone. No, I mean, it's not bad, but they've definitely been leveled with a block in the factory. Anyway, yeah, so the reason you adjust your the point is that the guitar will play with no relief at all, as in a flat neck. It will play, but it doesn't leave any room for the strings. Hardly. If you want a low action, it doesn't leave any room for the strings to spin and basically bang off the. I'll just throw my string guide away. It doesn't leave room for the strings to spin at their sort of center points. So really, you want a bit of curvature to allow some room for the strings to spin. So we got 10, 13, we got 13, 17, 17. I guess we'll go 24. I like a bit of clearance, Clarence. And we go 26, 32. Yeah, and so anything upwards from flat is good if you want to create a little bit of room for your strings to spin. If they don't have that room to spin, then what will happen is they will clatter off the frets as you strike them. They tend to. 36, 42. There must be a 42 in here. And it's there. Okay, 46, and we've got a 48. That will do. Right. So, yeah. So the first thing is the setting of the relief is just to control the bending of the string, the neck caused by the strings. It's not to adjust your playing action. When you do adjust it, let's say you like loads of curve because you want the strings to spin a lot in the middle, then you get a resultant increase in playing action that is noticeable here and decreases as you go that way, right? So that's the secondary effect, but it's not the primary effect, nor the reason, nor should it be the reason you start cranking your truss rod. Got it? If you want to adjust your action on your guitar, you do it here and here, but it makes sense to set to check that the curvature of the neck is kind of where you want it at the beginning. Now I say kind of, and I go hold down the first and last fret and I go, yeah, there's a gap there, it's about 0.3 of a mil, fine for me. Now you notice I'm very cavalier casual. People have, people go on Fender's site and they read all kinds of things about whose site, Gibson's, it's got to be 0.01 thousandths of a mil. Doesn't matter. Set it with a bit of clearance, a bit, as measured by holding the first and last fret down. Is there a gap? Yes. Is it miles high? No. Is it a bit? Yes. Therefore you have some curvature. Start with that, right? Then do your action settings at this end and this end, knowing all the time that all three have an interdependence on each other. They're not independent. So given that I've got sort of the curvature that I like, I think, if I now do this one first and make it really low down here, then this is going to start off being lower, and I then adjust a little bit less at this end. If on the other hand I start off adjusting this end first, I've got to remember that when I take it down at this end, this is also going to go lower. So I stay, if this is the first thing I do out of these two, I go conservative on this, knowing that this is going to reduce it. Right now I can see that I'm about at my desired action, so that's not going to change. So I would, if I do this first now, I'll probably be aiming pretty close on for my target of 0.4 to 0.3, between 0.3 and 0.4 of a millimetre over the first fret. And I can do that feeling fairly confident that it's not going to do me any harm. Now I'm just looking at this right now, and the spacing's great. The bass string at this end is about 0.5 millimeter, in some ways closer to the edge than I would like visually. However, remembering that we're always playing kind of right-handed players, we're always playing downwards, we're very rarely pushing upwards with this note. It's actually perfectly workable in that position. It also means that the gap down here isn't huge, and the gap, hopefully there's plenty, well, it leaves plenty of real estate here for the E string, which is the one you know, the top strings here, you want to be able to move them sideways. This less so, certainly down here anyway. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start from the bass strings, or the D string out, and this is going to be quite interesting straight off because I've got a lot to remove. Now I tend to start off by using this what do I call it, jeweler's file. Now this is a pretty hefty cutting tool, and I'm just going to fire away backwards until I get somewhere approaching where I want. It's going to be quite some time off with this, and there's not much of a faster way I can do this, and I still need to be careful that it's in the direction I want. You know, it's nice and straight, parallel to the, or in line with the, parallel to the direction of the neck, but I'm making sure that it's cutting backwards a little bit. So it's a fairly deep slot it will be fairly bit deep to start with, and then as I get very close to the desired depth, which I don't even need to yet to start measuring with a gauge because we're not nearly there, as I get close to it, I'll pull out my 0.3 of a millimeter gauge, and I'll just look it under there and make sure we're not going too far. Now this is about the sort of quickest and probably the most reliable way. You've got to make sure the top of this stays flat so that we're going down in a straight line that way. We don't want to be kind of going off sideways, and there's always a slight risk of that if we're coming down such a big height, but there's no simpler way. I could get a Dremel in there, but you've got the risk of, you know, if you cut it with a Dremel disc, you really have a risk of going too far. And so I would recommend, if you've got a large nut, just cut away like this and just be patient. Most guitars have got a much lower nut, obviously. Now it may look like a huge great shark's tooth, and right now it is, but the good thing is come the end, once I've checked this plays, then we'll just pull the strings to one side and we'll just Dremel off all the excess material in the nut that we don't need, and then it will return this to a nice low looking nut. So we're still quite a way over the mark here. Obviously you can see that the wider this goes, the slower it starts to cut, because we're cutting all sides of a rather large notch. But you know, the only other way around it is you could start by taking more off the top with a sort of sense of how far we have to go down, but I feel nervous about that. I would much rather go cut down until I'm where I want to be, and then kind of stop at that point and remove excess material after the fact, rather just be cutting like this. Now the great thing about these V-notch files is you could, if you didn't care about the look of the thing, and I don't see why you should, you could pretty much leave that done as is and play the guitar, and it would play surprisingly well. And the reason, one of the reasons it would play surprisingly well, is because, first of all, the bottom of this isn't exactly totally knife point. It is, you know, rounded if you looked at it microscopically, so it's kind of rounding off the bottom of the slot as it goes on its own. And also because it's a wedge, or it's cutting a notch, there's no chance, or very little chance, that the strings are going to bind in that notch. There's a lot of room above, it opens out above the string at all points, so you could do all of your nut slots like this, right? I promise you. So I'm going to be proper, and I'm going to go, oh, let's go for my really expensive nut slots, nut files now, because I'm now getting close to where I want to be, and I'm going to pull out my 50 quid a set pile of files and cut the last bit. And of course, as soon as I do this, I'm cutting a fairly constricted slot, which, unlike the V notch, chokes the string. So actually you're better to get almost to the mark with this V file and then just use your expensive nut file for the last, you know, few tenths of a millimetre, if that. So as I say, I am now at the point where it's getting difficult because there's so much material at the side. It probably makes more sense now to try and cut the last bit with this. I'm obviously not cutting so much material just underneath the file. So I'm looking for sort of some fresh air underneath the string, which will tell me that it's still not touching the feeler gauge. And the fact that the note plays, it also tells me that I'm not down at my desired height for the nut slot yet. And I'm also trying to keep an eye on that headstock behind there, because sometimes you end up having to use a fresh bit of your file which can be further down there, and if you do that you just run the risk of tipping over and scraping the headstock. I've done it on more than one occasion, unfortunately. But then when you get right near to the mark, try and come back to the safe zone near the end. But typically the end of your file, if you're using these Japanese style nut files, the end is going to be where it's distorted from overuse. So very near to the mark, a little bit more, and this is, I always say this is like the road safety advanced driving instructors tell you, that statistically the most likely place for you to have an accident tends to be within, I'm going to now a bit more, tends to be within a couple of hundred yards of home, because I think it's sort of, research shows that people tend to switch off because they think they're home and dry, and they lose their focus and, you know, let their attention wander a little bit. On the mark, blazingly low action, but you can see how far that's gone into there, to how far down it's gone to make it work that way. Now I'm just keeping them up at pitch, mainly because I want to be sure that the string isn't going to get caught somewhere down the slot. I want it to go all the way in. This is absolutely beautifully low. I mean, it would be effortless to play this, and that's what's always been a bit of a speciality of mine, is making the nut slot end of things just light as it can be. And I've just been very careful in this first few sort of strokes on this, because this is where we're kind of setting the mark for this string, so we've got to get it right. Okay, and then it's a case of cutting down. Now I can see how far that's gone. It's gone for miles, but it's also, it is risky that it wanders a little bit at this depth. I mean, given that I know how deep that has to cut, I could at this stage use a slightly different device, but in this case what I'd probably use is a fairly wide bass guitar file, with a view of just trying to cut this straight down in a straight line as kind of cleanly as possible till we get near our target. And then a similar thing, the string should drop into there fairly easily. And I've sort of widen it up a little bit more with this bit here. And I probably end up using a combination of all three things. This one to kind of cut down, because it's got quite a good blade on it, but partly to make sure things stay sort of vertical to the line, yeah, in the right place. Because really all you want to do is get down to where you want to get down to, and if you feel it's kind of grabbing a bit, you can just go in with this and widen it up with a V. The good thing about this type of thing is that it will cut the slot down with less wandering chance, whereas with the V notch, it does tend to risk wandering. It kind of pushes itself sideways if it starts that way. So as you can see, this is quite a dependable cutter, and then we get quite quickly down to near where we want to go. So this is probably better for shallower things. This, as you can see, can get me quite quickly to where I want to go. Now, don't worry, even if you're over on the treble strings, don't worry if this is really wide when you get to the treble strings, because you're actually going to remove most of that by the time you come down to the final little bit, which, for example, here we'll work with the actual file to cut down. Now this one is a bit worn out, this one, so I could really do with a new one. You see it's struggling a bit. I've got this end that works cleaner, but it's long, it's sticking out a mile, so I have to be very careful not to run it against the headstock. So I guess the thing to point out is it's not often I end up cutting something as deep as this. It's only occasionally on a custom nut. Sometimes these things snap clean off, so you can deliberately break them if you need to access a sort of a less crimped or bendy part of the file. It's quite good to be able to just snap it off in the vise and carry on using a newer part, but sometimes it doesn't, and this one hasn't done it the way I wanted it to. So I'm trying to. It's got a little bit of a wiggle, and then the fat strings, that wiggle can really sort of choke up the file while you're trying to use it. You see that it gets quite difficult to use unless you're able to widen it with the V notch as you go. The danger, of course, is when it starts to grab like that and it starts to get difficult to cut. The danger you have is that you start to have to put a lot of force into it, and then you overcut. You can run the risk of overcutting like that. So I've gone back to the V notch just to get as much of a breathing space as possible before reverting to this. Now some people kind of, for some people, what I'm doing here is the exact reason why they would prefer to try and cut a nut up from the base and end up with the right height that way. And it's just, I've never got a good result that way, and it could just be my lousy technique. What I know for sure is when I go down this way, I get exactly the playing action I want, and then that stays there and it doesn't move from that point onwards. So for me it's kind of worth doing. You can see this is a bit of a distorted thing. It just doesn't want to go through there. I'm just going to be very careful. I don't want to run the risk of overcutting it. Come on. Obviously we've got to keep that backwards tilt. We need the string to come up the back of the nut and launch off the front edge. We don't want any chance of it sitting flat on the nut, so it's got to have this ramp behind, really. And we're not far off. It is making it difficult to get to the bottom of the slot now. You can see that it's kind of challenging me. It's also, the thicker the slot, the harder it is to actually cut it. So you end up working harder to get to remove material, and it's a difficult proposition. So again, if I can get in there with this and just open up the slot, we're very nearly there. As I say, all of this kind of shark's tooth stuff that you can see here will be removed shortly, and we'll have a very low profile nut, but one that does exactly the job on this guitar. I mean, realistically, you never need a tall nut anywhere. doesn't do anyone any good. In fact, if anything, it just serves to run the risk of grabbing the strings, particularly if all you've used is these fabulous nut files. If you followed the rule book, you're far more likely to have strings that are catching in the slots if you've just used these expensive things, which is a bit dopey really, since they try and sell you, not only sell you these, but sell you one complete set for every single string gauge you might ever want to use. And what they don't tell you is that you really want to be using oversized sets. So the last thing you want to do is go off to eBay. If you're a 9s gauge player, for example, the last thing you want to do is go off to eBay and buy yourself a set of 9 gauge nut files, because you will guarantee that your strings will choke straight away in the slot. They'll catch. In fact, they'll barely even go through, and that's just a par for the course. So I always cut quite a bit above, a gauge above what I'm actually using. So I'll pick a set for 10s when I'm actually fitting 9s, and I'll cut the nut slots as if for 10s. And actually, even when I've done that, it very often still needs some widening work with sandpaper and a blade. So even one size above, you still get strings catching. Okay, let's see where we are. Miles away. So I'm going to keep on cutting with this, employing its soaring potential. Followed up by this. The thing about this is when you've got a curve on the nut coming this way, it can sort of push that triangular file sideways, because it's trying to push it down the slope a little bit. So you've got to be conscious of that. Otherwise you stand a chance of the slot wandering towards the outside edge here, which I'm trying to counter that at the moment with this combination of things I'm using. So I'm pushing a little bit to that way when I'm using this, so I don't end up drifting downhill too far or further than I want to go. Okay, let's try the. Now this has got a definite bend in here, but there's not a lot I can do other than pin it and get some more. I think what I'm going to do next is I'll probably buy myself an 11s set and use it pretty much for everything except 11s, in which case I might use it for 11s, but I'd be ready to do a fair bit of work with the sandpaper and the blade after that. But yeah, it's got a kink in it, so that 48 is now becoming progressively less useful. Still, let's go down a bit more with this. You can see it's a lot of, with a nut as high as this. I was being conservative when I cut it. I gave what it was, I thought, a millimetre or so over the line of the frets, but it was too much. So unless I could get a bit more, a bit less cautious about it, it's always going to take a lot of cutting when you build a custom one. So there's not a lot of ways around that. It's very rarely as convoluted as this when I'm doing it with a you know, a new nut, pre-made one. Now this is actually almost too bent to use at the moment unless I go past the, it's hard to see, but it's got a kink in it and it just will not play. And I don't think, if I try and snap it using a vice as a grip, no, typical, all the other ones, some of them snap straight off, but this one is refusing to do that. So it's now got a bendy handle. Yeah, it's just really weird. They just snap, some of them, which is very handy because you can use the snapped off bit, but this one is a no-go. Okay, so as you can see, it's caught in this too deep a slot, and it's too chunky a file to use in a tight slot like that. This is nearly where I want it to be anyway, but in fact I'm going to stop right there. Then we move, take off the top ones. Oh, wrong. Ha! I think I'm going to have to take that tuner out, or else Vince, you're going to be grabbing for it every time like I have. Okay, so here we go again. I mean, time consuming, but not the end of the world. It'll be worth it in the end. You'll get an absolute precision first fret action out of this, which you won't get by kind of trying to measure it from the bottom up. It just doesn't happen that way. Okay, now I'm going to use this one and just try and get a nice straight down cut to approximately where we want to be. And then I will chase it down with the notch just to make it open up a little bit so I can continue working. So yeah, I think it's good that when you don't use the notch to try and drive the slot, but just use it to follow up with, and use something more direct that's going to cut a straight line and you can control like this. Not a bad tool. And obviously as we get close to the bottom with that, we're going to replace that with the correct file. But if we didn't, we could continue with this. That's the point. If we didn't have those nut files. Nearly there, not too far. Well, a fair bit. A little bit more with this. Which side am I using? The right side. It's funny, the more I look at this closely, the more I see the marks of the fret leveling. And I will take a couple of pictures, hopefully close up, so you can see it yourself. But it's definite telltale signs. Okay, so get to a point now where I could introduce the 24, the G file. This probably works quite quickly by comparison now when we get to here, so I've got to be careful not to sort of attack it like I've been having to work on the thicker strings, because they resist, they don't cut down so quickly, but suddenly if you go at it with the same sort of force, you can suddenly find yourself past the mark on the higher strings. It'll kind of reset your brain a little bit. Nearly there. So my feeling about this is the try and keep the costs down. If this plays nicely as is, then I will try. We probably won't need to do any fret leveling, which in turn means it should be a little cheaper. But I'm not kind of guaranteeing that if we get to a nice low action and it's choking out. We're on the mark there. Stop. Yeah, if we need to, we will. And on we go. Next one. See that cut down quicker because the slot's much narrower. Let's get a feel of that one. Okay, widen it out. Check the gap. Still a fair old mile away, but we'll carry on with this one. We have some other ones of these that I could switch to, even narrower ones. Probably all it would mean is it would just cut a little bit faster, I think, but I'm fairly comfortable with the speed of progress. I prefer to go slow and make sure it's right than to aim for speed. Not far off. So back to our, not our 48, that's not what we want. Back to our 24. Sorry, not 24, now we're on 17. Again, this will probably cut quite quickly down the bottom of this slot. So, deep as it looks, we've got to remember we're after a precision. We're very nearly there, tiny bit more. Yeah, I think this decision on the factory's behalf to do a basic fret level before the thing goes out, I like that. I think it's generally, all told, a good decision. Actually, I haven't done all this work. I don't think I'm going to work with that black thing. I think it's best to stick with bone, dependable substance as it is, and as reliable an operator as well. Yeah, it's a good call to fret level in the factory, even though in a sense it's, you know, it could offend some purists because the guitar goes out with visible flat spots and I guess a little bit scratchy, you know, so that you can really tell. You can really tell that it's been leveled. But I think the overall payoff that you get from doing it at the factory, you know, for the player, the overall payoff for the player is worth it, because it just means you can get the guitar out of the box, dial up a low action, and the thing will play. And I think the smart money has realised that that's the thing that a player's going to comment on, you know, and be struck by. The thing that's going to drive them crazy faster than anything is that they take it out of the box and it can only play at a high action, and the minute they try and lower the action they're getting buzzes and, you know, high fret interference. So I think from a manufacturer's point of view, it's really does make a lot of sense to sacrifice that little bit of cosmetic finishing and a little bit of, you know, scratchy feel. Sacrifice it for the low action setability, I suppose you could call it, to use some rubbish words. Because I think that's just recognising what the priority is for most players who'll pick up a guitar or buy a guitar and pull it out of the box. They want it. They really do want it usually to play at a decent low action. I mean, some people get very kind of snotty about guitar playing actions and insist that you know, only fools set them as low as I do, and blah blah blah. And maybe just that's their experience, but I've almost never come across anyone who asks me to raise the action. Most players are always interested in the lowest, lightest action they can have that plays well. And of course, some crusty old players will dispute that thing, that, you know, they'll say that a high action for them is what plays well, and anything else doesn't play well, and that's the distinction. And, you know, ultimately when you get to that level and you're talking about personal preferences, then there's no point arguing anything. You know, you just have to go with what somebody says they want, and, you know, it kind of becomes stupid at that point to have people telling other people that they're wrong. You know, just accept it. If a lot of people like a low action when they get their first guitars, you know, respect it, I say. Okay, I'm almost on the mark with this one. I'm gonna have a feel. Ooh. Well, okay, that's gone out of tune, but no problem. Wow, that is a low, light first fret action. Whew, you can hardly even feel it. Get a note. Sorry, I've left my vibration tuner inside. Ladies and gentlemen, we are almost there. Let us do a little thingamajig here. Now, oh yeah, the one thing I hasn't yet tested. It's kind of a bit stuck if it's way off the mark anyway. I hasn't yet tested the intonation. I can only hope that my calculations were correct in the first place, and that we ended up with the things in the right place, or as close to the right place as is humanly possible to get them. And all that will tell me, let's just bring the tuner over for comparison. I'll switch this off. I'll just get this tuner up on the screen, and we could be close to being complete on this thing with its new strange neck angle that nobody else will have. Get rid of the reverb. Remember which one to turn, Sam? Yes. And that bridge pickup, I think it's still quite some way away. Let's wind it up a bit more. Maybe ultimately a limit to how high we can get it, but we'll do what we can. It's actually still not too far away, but keep on coming, keep on coming. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Yay. Now this is going to go out of tune. Ooh, not bad, not bad. Tiny bit sharp, which means I'm going to drag this backwards a little bit, which is great, which is what, stop creaking, which is all where I've got the leeway to so do that, see? This is like good old tunematic bridges. They're always a crap design for this part of the game, but turn this ear clockwise and haul it back somewhat to about there. Oh, God, isn't that annoying? Oh, I can't stand this creak. Yes, on the mark. Whew. It's not often everything goes quite that well. Trust me. Although, stop it. Yes. Fraction too long. The opposite way, please. Give me a consonant, Carol. Show my age. Back, which is what I expected, which is great. Everything's gone swimmingly well. Right, this has got to come back a little bit before this one, so I'm just going to hoil the other ones back a fraction too, and I'm following the time-honoured pattern here, which is purely experience says, yep, they normally do this, this and this at this point. There's a sort of standard alignment and configuration which you can anticipate, and if you get one in place you can pretty much line all the others up. Oh God, this creaking is doing my head in. Yeah. Back out a little bit, just a fraction short, push forward, push this one forward then as well. Eep, eep. Oh, the creaking, it's like somebody might as well scraping some polystyrene. Well, we are almost there. If we can find the damn screw slot. Oh, these stupid things, I hate them. Did I tell you how much I hate? Actually, I like this shala, but I don't like tunematic bridges generally. Push that away a little bit more. feeling it, that's worse. Push it back, push it back. I think that A is lying to me a bit. Oh, stop creaking. Wrong string. Somewhere with that, reminding me of something. What was that? An old Dave Gilmour thing. But I'm not going to play it because it's going to go out of tune every 5 seconds until I've stretched the strings out, which I haven't done. I've cheated and I just used them for doing the nut slots, so it won't be pleasurable to play until I have stretched it and changed the strap. Right? I can't play this. Well, I can't play the guitar anyway. I don't think this is such a problem. This positioning, positioning the pole issue. And I put, you know, then aficionados will get all freaked out about it, but. That's the out of sequence or switching coils, and then down here when we've got 2 on in parallel instead of series. Gives you a kind of, oh god, this strap is absolutely throwing my brain in. It gives you a strange kind of coil tap, but it's not a coil tap. It's just. Oh. Go on, scrape the whiteboard, scrape the blackboard, scrape the polystyrene. Oh. Well, I'm pleased with this. Wrong knob. Needed doing anyway. What's wrong with that? Nothing. Wide string. I'm pleased with that. Oh, I'm not pleased with that strap. My friend, you can go away. You're no longer needed. The only thing it is needed is I'll take off some of the excess material. Vince, I hope you like that. I am quite... Oh, right, that's it. I can't do it. Oh. It's like... Oh, yeah, it's like nothing on earth. Right. No. Oh, yeah. Oh, well, look, I'm pleased with that. I just let me give you a look before we do the last couple of things. Intonation is good. This is how it looks. The Ibanez 7 to ultra wide 6 conversion. Even with our little pickups sticking up, let's get them balanced, because it's nice to have such a thing. They rock around a bit, as do all single point fixing pickups, but that's quite nice, that is. I don't know where the plastic cover's gone from the neck one, so I'll take the plastic cover off the seats on that one. There's no point having one and not the other. So what you've got right now, what you've got is you've got not a nice relief, not too little. You've got intonation everywhere. This is intonated now in a way that thing. Well, hopefully, I've forgotten whether I recorded a bit at the beginning of this video. It was a diabolical. I've still got some paper on here. Diabolical. It was horrible. It was nothing intonated, because I think the whole bridge was in the wrong place, which is kind of lucky that on this particular beast we've made it play. Now it's still going out tune. I'm gonna do a little bit of my usual thing while we're here, because it's the right thing to do. Okay, I'm going to bend out all the little bits. I'm going to let you choose if you want to lose the tuner. I think it's kind of tidy with it on. I'd rather that than sort of another filled hole with more lacquer that somebody go, oh look, you filled a hole up there. I mean, just leave a tuner in. It doesn't look out of place with 7. You just don't notice. It's a 6 string. The only person who'll notice is you if you miss and grab the wrong one, like I've been doing. But I doubt you will, because you probably start from down here and work out that way. So what I'm just doing now is my final, one of near final things, is to just stretch out the strings. This guitar I think is in playable, very good playable condition now, so I don't think I need to do any excess fret leveling or anything. It's already been done. That's what I was going to do. I was going to take a picture to show you in close up what tells me that the frets have been leveled in the factory. Let's find an example. There we go. Focus. Thank you. Breathe and focus. Let's find ones that are really. There's one. Where's the camera? Is that with a hello camera? There's one. Now I'm not being critical of this thing. I actually think what, as I mentioned, I think what they've done is a good commercial decision. It's good for the player and it's good for the manufacturer, because your player gets a guitar that will play in tune nice and low. I'm not going to actually do anything else this apart from give it a clean up. The only one thing I'm going to do now, having done a bit of stretching, I'll do some more stretching, is I'm now going to show you the crazy last sort of last ditch bit is to, am I slacking the right thing off? Probably. Slack off the right thing, and gives me a chance to do two things. One is to Dremel off the excess nut, and then we'll clean up the headstock and we'll chuck the thing back on. Truss rod cover. Now what I'm just quickly looking for is where the other slightly bigger, there we go, a slightly bigger drum sandery thing went, and that will help us take it off quicker. So look away now if you don't like the smell of bone. How many times we're going to do that? what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something that just helps me a little bit. I'm going to draw a bit of stuff. This isn't, by the way, to make it play better actually, although those of you who've used, what's that stuff, graphite in the slots before know that's a good lubricant, but this is so I can keep a track on where I've got to in my dremeling. Right, so I'm going to do a two-handed approach. Like I said, if you don't like the stench of burning bone, you won't like this. Now this is actually quite slow because there's so much to take off, and it helps to, I think, level out in between the frets. Otherwise, it sort of runs over the top of them. It's getting down nice and low. It's still too deep for my liking. This is got a little bit of a crinkle down there. But in a way, this is like a strat, just on the mark, I think, on that one. Let's get a cloth and wipe it off. Yeah, I mean, it absolutely doesn't need to be a tool nut. It's not really doing anything in the tool department. That's got my greasy hands on it. Looks like a scene from a crime with fingerprints. The bone dust has gone into my greasy palm prints, and Columbo's got his man. So drag this over the top, and drag this over here, and drag this over here, and then this over here, and then this over here. Actually, these are quite finely perched. I don't think they're going to go anywhere. No, they're quite anchored. Maybe a tad more than I would have chosen had I been sane at the time of writing. Right, let's tell you what. Why don't we use the thing we were given, that's really tight, the thing that we were given for doing things like this. Ah, I forgot to do the cover, but I'll do that now anyway. Come on. Actually, the thing I've got here looks like I did it on purpose. It's that nice and low. It's a little bit. Probably be better off doing it with a file if you have the time and the inclination. But it's a bit of a. You saw what it's like trying to file the nut slots. Trying to cut that thing back with a file. It can take a long time, but that's fine. It holds everything. Ooh. Now we're going to get this back in tune, stick the cover on, take it indoors, give it a kind of polish down inside away from all this dust, and we will be ready to go. That's really good. I'm pleased. I'm pleased. Very pleased. Oh, one thing to do. What's that I can feel? That's interesting. Oh, it's a bit of, yeah, okay, a bit of leftover sticky tape. Yeah, one last thing to replace. Get on there, you. 3 of these little, I said 3, I said, oh, no. Right, who's got my other one? 3 of these little things. I've got to find another one. I thought I had all of them. Right, this is a bit of a pain, but where is the third one? Now where is it gone? I can't believe I have lost another one. No, there it is, the last one. It's thwarting me. Now that's not going to go in on top of the one that's already in there, is it? Yeah, that is it, my friends. Seven to 6 string conversion with a new neck angle, new shala bridge, stop bar fitted, electrics tested, rewired, repositioned, neck angle changed, new nut, custom nut, actually cut to within an inch of its life on the lower lower strings. But you know what? Oh, that's the thing. I haven't technically checked the overall height of these last ones. Let's see if they're in the zone of ridiculous expectations. That's the only other thing. 1 millimeter. 1 millimeter. 1 millimeter. 1 millimeter. It's a bit low. Counter. Counter goes up a bit, does it? I don't know. Counter should go up, shouldn't it? I want 1.5 to about 1.2 really, not any lower than that. It's a bit much to go any lower, to be honest. A little bit of sandpapering needed there and there. I have a horrible feeling that I've just lowered it. It's choking out right on the end there, but that's a millimetre. So we've got to go, because of the radius of the bridge, we've got to go with which way am I going? We've got to go with the middle frets as the middle strings. So we have to go a little higher at the edges on this kind of thing because the radius is different. I'm going down at this side. What a fool! Why am I doing that so wrong? What is wrong with me? Why don't I understand how things turn? Right. Okay, let's tune this again. That's what you expect to hear when you raise it. Notes to rise. So we've got 1.5 on the low string, we've got 1.5 on the other end, which is what I kind of expect. We've got 1 point, it's quite strange. It's not as out of line as I thought it was, but it is a little bit different from radius, although, do you know what they've done? That's deceptive. The actual bridge top isn't as far out as this curved surface here makes it look. There's a fret in there. This fret here is just a little higher than the others. Yeah, do I I'm not sure. I think it's worth leveling the whole thing just for that tiny zizzing there. I think that's another 30 quid, and I'm not sure it needs it. It's pretty sort of low as anything to begin with. I'm going to take it in the house and I've still got that sellotape on there. That Gorilla Tape. I have to remember to take it off. There we have it. Beautiful. 7 to 6. What I'll do is I'll probably send an email and ask see how it sits with Vince, and I think that it's pretty playable as is. We've got a 7-string bridge here that's not really any use to anybody, certainly not to me. Yeah, there you go. Well, listen, thanks for sticking that one out. We're done. We're nearly almost done. Alright, so I will take it indoors. That's pretty cool, isn't it? 7 to 6. And you can see the slight bit of fanning at the bottom. Fanning, I said. I said fanning. The strings come out of the stop bar and go just a bit off to the side, as they have to do. I can't really get this from here. As they have to do in order to come out onto the bridge. And then they go between the poles, which sort of looks a bit like that bass guitar. And then the amount of quote-unquote real estate either side of the strings is pretty good. There's not too much. There's more on the high E side, which is what I wanted, but I'm pleased with that. Yeah, see you again. Right, just back on. Excuse me, back with this one. Checked with Vince, and he does want those extra notes cleaned out, which is fine. So here we are to do it. Just wanted to be sure. Some people, that extra, what do we call it? That extra work might not have been worth the additional money. You know, basically, what we're looking at is this. Tiny, but we'll take care of it. We'll take care of it. We'll do it. Excuse me. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to gently take these off. I'm going to keep these strings because they're pretty brand new, and I'm going to make sure that they're kept out of the way and safe. Otherwise, part of the reason is I'd end up kind of losing out if I replace those. So I'm going to keep them well out of the way of any pen and I can feel the scratchiness of the original fret level on here. I am going to use, I thought for a moment about just not using this marker pen technique, but then I thought actually it's so good to show up what's happening. I'll clean the fingerboard at the end of this job. Yeah, so it's so good to mark to observe what's going on with the fret level, and so I will use it. But it's entirely possible with this method to do it without the marker pen, because you can basically just go level until you hear the notes you want free up. That's the bottom line. That's how it works. So unusually I've got the radio on in the background. That's because I'm sort of I've had a long day in front of the camera already today and kind of needed a bit of brain off, so forgive me if I'm not going to be 100% as talkative. I don't suppose anyone will mind too much. So I'll talk, and I'll probably cut down, oh, I'm going to sneeze now, cut down the amount of stuff on video, since I've shown this. Morris, no, not right now. Always when I'm in a hurry to do something quickly, you come in for attention. Hello. Ooh, I feel like cold sticky nose. But I love it really. Don't I? Yes. It's a good thing in a way doing this, because, alright mister, oh, your cold nose, oh, it's wet and cold, alright buddy, alright, oh, don't do. It's not I don't love you, Morris, I just don't. Oi, go with my bath mat that I'm using. No, don't wipe your face on there, come on, please. I think part of the problem is I don't have his stool at the moment. It's been used. He's lost his sitting on stool, which I think he's a bit miffed at. Excuse me, fella. So on the radio they're still talking about Syria. As you can believe. Oh no, come on please, Morris. Seriously, not right now. I've got things I've got to do. Come on, handsome. Sorry, it's been a long day in the shed already. Alright, matey. No, please. No. Morris, come on, you handsome boy, I much love you, but I need you to come down right now. There's a good boy. I've played with your feline friends. I'll get my phone out of the way. Right, So here we go, fret leveling. Use the familiar old method, the good old tried and tested method. Now we know we've got a bit of congestion up this end, that's the main area. It's got also got quite a big curve on it, this neck. I mean relief curve, not quite a big, but it's got a relief curve. So we will need to adjust this to match. Slightly over. Sorry. Sometimes just when Morris gets all affectionate, it's just the wrong time of day. Okay. Okay. So now, I'm going to lift this out of the way, off the edge, push the thing out of the way, and begin. The 24 fretter. Now, while I'm at it, let's wind down the pickups out of the way. They're a bit, not in the way exactly, but they're sort of tilting a bit at the moment, so I'll just wind them out of the way. There we go. Okay, so my kind of main focus really is going to be up this end where we've got a couple of uneven frets hanging out, and it quite quickly, when it scuffs off the black marker, it's quite quickly revealing the flattened frets from before, which is where the radius block has gone over it, which is quite, it was quite a lot relatively speaking, but it's a good way of doing it quickly in the factory setting. So that's fine, that's not a problem anyway. I'm just going to make sure it bends. Of course we're in a 24 fret neck, so it's a little bit harder to get the get these things to touch. Okay, that's good. Same. To one side. Right. So it's really the unevenness that's going to matter on this is when we get across to the B, far side of the B track, and then on into the G track, because that's where this bend is choking out on the frets. And I can see it's showing up a cluster of frets which are high up this end, and it's quite, it's this one here particularly, so it's showing up quite clearly. Now what's happening here, there is something happening here I need to take care of, by the way, and it's this. Because of the low action that I've set, where do things go? There they are. Because of the low action I've set, this screw here is not sitting low enough, so the string is actually touching it, which is no good at all. I don't think there's any way of making it sit any lower. It's quite a, I don't know what the word would be. It's let's just leave it off for a minute, because I don't like the way, it's like the guitar's never been intended to have this low an action. That's playing better. It was just, it had lost a little bit of tone, and that was because it was hitting this plastic on the runoff. Yeah, I might suggest we leave that off. And the funny thing is, the reason it's like that is because I don't think anyone ever intended to have a low action as low as this on this guitar, which is quite funny really. So they've not designed it with that in mind. It's no surprise though, because not many manufacturers would expect to go that low. I'm just going to add a little bit of curve into here then. Okay, a tiny bit off there. Yeah, so I think I will leave that off. It doesn't need to be. We've got two on there, but I will send it back with it. But I'm going to leave it off because I don't want it touching, because that screw was lifting, just slightly lifting up the string, and it basically upsetting the break angle over the nut, which is absolutely not what you want, because that will rob the string of tone, or it'll interfere with the tone or the resonance of the string, the free ringing of the string. So I don't want that to happen, but it is a kind of I suppose we call it a victim of success, as in it's only happening because the action is so low at that end, but it's not been designed really with that in mind. Okay, so I'm just concentrating on this high fret, and interestingly it's showing up other frets that are high now here that we're choking out, so that's kind of also what I was probably going to expect. So what we get is I'll do a little bit more in this G track, because I'm pushing that E, high E, right across into that G track. Part of the challenge is the action's low, but also because the string is effectively going uphill on the fret. That's always the problem. This is quite a flat radius, but on tighter radii that's really problematic, because as the string kind of goes up the hill, the start and end points of the string are further down, are below the hill, if you like. So it kind of goes up and then down again, which makes it very difficult. It takes away a bit of clearance that you've got, hence the note chokes out. There we go. Now I think that has cured it. I don't think we need to do anything else. That's everything that's standing in the way of notes bending is taken care of, but you can see it's quite precise, this area here. You have to work quite hard to get out these congested areas at low action. It's always the challenge. I'm just going to clean my fingers before I carry on. So the next stage on this is I'll do is just go through the whole thing. The next stage is I'm going to take these strings off again and prop them out, put them safely out of the way because they're still good. And put all these things on vertical to make it easy to undo it. So now what we're going to do is take this off, but we want to reprofile the fret, which is something they never did in the factory after their initial leveling. So we're going to reprofile the fret. That means reshape it, because at the moment the frets have got some flat spots on them, and that's common for all guitars. It's nothing unusual about that. Some more or less than others, but the fact that it's common you can see by virtue of the fact that they've done a level in the factory, because they know, like everyone else who frets guitars, they know it's impossible to fret a guitar without leaving the frets microscopically out of kilter with each other. Simple, can't do it. So their solution to that is to do the factory level with the radius block. Now the radius block leveling, oh, thank you, I saw that coming. The radius block leveling method is effective, but it's actually very costly, and in terms of fret metal, and that's why my system there is actually so much better. This method, let's take this off for a second and put that neatly out of the way. I can come back to that. Yeah, the radius block is very clumsy, or crude. It's very accurate in one sense, but it's costly. So it's accurate in that when you use the radius block, for example like this, whatever the radius is, you use that to, well, this is what they've done in the factory. They've just gone like this, and that's just ripped off the top of all the frets that might have been standing out mostly. There's two things that are wrong with that. One is that it imposes the radius of the block onto your frets, regardless of whether they regardless of whether they're actually seated at that radius or not. Come on, Morris, down you go. Come on, out you go. Good boy. Yeah, so the radius block method imposes its preset radius onto your frets, whether or not they're actually seated at that correct radius. Now, usually they're not, because of the vagaries of fretting. And what happens is, in imposing it, it usually takes off more at the edges than anywhere else, and that's because the frets tend to stand up a little bit at the edges. So the radius block just says, to hell with that, I'm making you 10 inch or 16 inch or whatever else it's going to do. But it does that by, as I say, by virtue of costing you a fair bit in metal. My method is you only level until, as you saw, the notes you want to free up play, and you don't really want to go below that. You're just aiming to make the action you've chosen play well. And in all of that, you actually don't mind leaving some unevenness in the frets, because so long as it's below the radar line, if you like, of the playing action we've chosen, then it's absolutely fine. We don't mind. It's just it's out of the way. It's invisible. Okay, these are not what I would call jumbo frets. So they're medium. And the idea of this tool here is to take the slightly flattened frets, which is the only way you can level frets, is by flattening them slightly, and you basically have to use this concave diamond file to file off the edges of the shoulders that your fret leveling has put into the frets, or let's say my fret leveling, but also theirs in the factory. And so what you do is you end up reshaping the fret within the material you've got left, without, conveniently with this file, without going any lower, because of course we've very carefully leveled the frets. And in the case of my method with the strings on, for the advantages that gives us. And in case you were wondering, the main advantage that gives us is that we're able to level only until we free up the notes that were otherwise choked. And the only real way you're going to know that, or you're going to be able to do that and stop as soon as you've achieved that, is by having it strung. Which is why it's a much better way than the radius block way, because the radius block keeps going until one of two things happens. You either cut some metal off the top of everything, in which case you go, yeah, they're probably level frets now, and stop, which is what they do in the factory. Or another method is you use the radius block until in conjunction with a fret rocker until you detect no further rocking, which tells you they're pretty much even. Now that's great, and you've got even frets at that point, but because it's done with the strings off, you then go and put the strings on, and what happens when you put the strings on is the longitudinal compression of the strings causes a slight movement in the seating of the frets, or where they sit, or where they sit in relation to each other, and that actually introduces a degree of inaccuracy or imperfection in the fret leveling, so that you get some choking and, look, I didn't put enough glue on there. Yeah, it kind of reintroduces some movement into it, and then for your frets are no longer actually as accurately level with each other as they were before. And that's quite significant. It's not a huge amount, but it is actually noticeable, so that frets leveled with the radius block method, you can string the guitar up and you can still suddenly find it's buzzing and choking, and it can be quite perplexing, because you think, hang on, I've just done it until there was no more rocking with the fret rockers, and they've hit it quite hard down at this end with the radius block. I have to say, it's an expensive way of doing it. You kill a lot of fret life with that radius block method, because it does that thing of imposing its radius onto the frets, not onto the neck, but onto the frets as seated. So that's the tricky bit. The the radius block says whatever the vagaries of your fretting technique and however your frets are actually seated, I'm going to reimpose a 12-inch radius, for example, and it does that regardless of what your frets are really doing. And as I say, quite often the frets will be can tend to be sitting up at the end a little bit, and the radius block will just grind those down until the frets that are there conform with its preset radius, whether it's really appropriate for the guitar in question or not. And in doing so, it costs you, you know, a fair bit of fret life, I have to say. So that's that. So this is what we've got now. Is we've got precision leveled frets. We've got a bit of I'm going to just get in here and while I'm at it, get a bit of dust out of the way that's built up. So it's nice and clean. Yeah, we've got precision level frets now. And I had some bone dust on it. Precision level frets. We've reprofiled them so they're all nice, nice as curved or arch shaped as they can possibly be. And the next stage is a sort of arduous polishing out process, which is going to take about half an hour, and I will go off camera for this because it's just noisy and dusty, and I can't really talk through it because it's quite aerobic and as well as being noisy. So just hold my fire a minute. I'm just going to look at the way this is seated. This is actually seated correctly, but with the nut set the way I've got it, this is too bulky. It's because it's got this little lever door in it. It's very cute, but it's actually too big to work effectively with this nut, because the string's touching it on the way over, and I really don't like it. So I'm going to avoid it. It's not we can live without it, but it's I don't want the string being hoisted up by that screw and running any chance of deadening the note, because that's just not worth it at all. So I'm just going to squeeze that into there, press it back down, and this to make sure that I've got any runoff, and then just make sure it sits where we need it to sit, which is about there. Okay, yeah, so the boring bit now, to do all that, before I even get to do the fun part of polishing it, I'm not going to do any oiling yet. I'll do oiling afterwards. I'm going to have to cover the entire fretboard with masking tape to protect the fretboard, and that obviously is fine when you start off with the large size pieces of tape, but eventually you need to start cutting it, which means I have to get the cutting board out and chop my way through loads of pieces, which is part of the joy of this part of the process. So there you go. But obviously I'll do as much of this until I need to cut the smaller bits, and then I'll basically go off camera and then come back when I'm reattaching the strings, having oiled the neck, and then we're done. And it's intonated, the action is set at both ends, and also the neck relief is set the way I want it as well. Okay. I've just had a play in the house, and sounding fine. With the, it's a little different from the guitars I normally play, which I've got my humbucker guitars have coil splits in them. This doesn't have coil splits, but it's got, I'm just going to take that off, just put it to one side. I don't want the bridge falling on the floor. Yeah, it's got some interesting sounds which are hard to put my finger on because I don't have them on any of my other guitars. Anyway, right, I'm going to cut loads of thin bits of tape now with my trusty tape cutting board, and I'll see you on the other side. But as I say, it's usually about half an hour of sanding I go through. 3 grits of paper to begin with, each of 2 pieces of each. And then, so I go 600, 1,000, 600, 1,000 and 1,500, 3 of each, 2 of each, sorry. And then I go to the micro mesh paper stage, which I then run from 1,500 through to 12,000, a series of 9 different grades. And by the time we get to there, we're polishing the frets. So this process now will be doing what the factory process didn't do. In other words, when they did the fret leveling, they left the frets rough. And this process now will polish those out so that they're... I don't need that huge ruler. Why do I need a huge ruler? Oh, I do, long ways. Of course I do. Yeah, this process will clear up that roughness and make them all nice and shiny, ready to be played. Which is much nicer feel anyway. But as I say, it's not an absolute must-have, and if money is an issue, then not doing it would save the additional 30 quid. But I'm kind of happier generally to go for the perfection than, as you could probably tell from the last bit of the video, kind of umming and ahhing, thinking, but it's probably a good thing to give a customer an option. Stay. I saw it. I got you. Yeah, to give them an option and say you can either have it playing like this or go one step further. So I do, of these 4 strips, I do 2 of them cut in 3s, 2 of them cut in half long ways, and then this ways. So I end up, oh Christ, nearly took me hand off, and end up with loads of bits of different thickness, which is always just enough to do the entire guitar neck. Put that there, prop that up there, get the guitar back on the bench. Oh, yeah, hope you glued yourself down nicely, neck. And then on we go and so on. So I'll save you the dreary time of watching this. You can see how exciting it is, and it's a thorough process, but it takes time. Look. Okay, see you afterwards. Okay, here we are, and he's back. Come on, you. Come on. Oh, no, you're going to, it's all going to go wrong, Morris. You're going to break something. Down you go. On your way. Alright, radio's chattering away. I'll turn it down in a second. I'll put this stuff on, and I didn't want this heavily sticky stuff on, but that's all I have at the moment. More Brexit talk. I'll just push these ends and get them all up that way. Okay, you can see how mucky this. Oh, Morris, my friend, come on, you've got to get down. I need to get on. Come on. So, yeah, mucky process. We have to clean up afterwards, and Morris, you're not really helping this time round. Putin, Vladimir Putin. Right, I'm going to have to put you down, Morris, because I've got to get on with this, really, I do. and you're just being cute, and that's a nice thing. But right now, you're going to sit there and just be cute, aren't you? I know. Hurrah! Okay, all of this paper ready to come off. Pointy headstock. It's just, this is ridiculous, this conversation. We've already decided, well, we've decided to do something that we don't know any details of, but yeah, we've decided. So we've decided that whatever happens, we're going to do it. Even if it's like walking off the edge of the planet. No, just because some people don't think it is walking off the edge of the planet means that no, we shouldn't do a sensible thing and have a review of what the hell's the consequence of this whole choice. No, just stick with it. Like you. I'm going to clean this up one more time, okay, and get the dust off, and you're, Mr. Morrison, yeah, go on, it's stinky. Yeah, sorry. Right, so I'm going to one run up here on this fingerboard with this stuff. Let's pick up any remaining dust and or pen on the side of the frets, which are now nice and smooth. And then, when that's dried off, we get to use a bit of paper again. Cat fur in my face now. A little bit of oil on the fingerboard. There we go. Cat fur in my nose. So once I've done this, then I go inside, book a courier, and then pack it up. And the packing up process takes about 2 hours, because it's my responsibility to ensure that all guitars leaving here stand the greatest chance of getting to their destination. And it is all down to packaging. There's so much unfair stuff actually thrown at couriers, no pun intended, you know, blaming them for everything under the sun. But actually, I reckon 99 or 100% of damage or breakages that we see in the forums, people complaining about couriers, the vast majority of that damage is caused by totally inadequate packaging. And of course that's the bit that nobody wants to take responsibility for. You know, much prefer to shout at the courier and blame them, which is completely unreasonable. It is almost exclusively bad packaging. The truth is, good packaging isn't going to stop a human being standing on this from breaking this, but that almost never happens. And in fact, you know, when people get all shirty about couriers, and I say to them, I've had 350, maybe 400 successful sends without a single bit of damage or a single loss in the entire time I've been doing it. And that's thanks to a combination of the basic effectiveness of the courier, which, contrary to what people want to believe, they do a damn good job, generally speaking. It's to do with the efficiency of the courier and the robustness of my packaging. And that's get my part of it right, and they usually almost exclusively get their part of it right. So I have no complaints, but I really do get tired of hearing people grandstanding on social media about what terrible things some courier has done to their package. It'll almost always be inadequate packaging. But and people don't like to be told that, they then get really crappy about it. Now I'm not saying it will never happen, because of course it will. One in a million times it's going to get smashed. You know, if it falls right out the back of a lorry and hits the ground from a great height. Well, I have to say my packaging probably can stand most of that, but you know, a photocopier in transit will fall on top of my packaging, and nothing I do will save it from damaging the guitar, because the forces will go through it and snap it. But, like I say, the vast majority of the time that isn't what happens to your guitars, and they aren't treated that way, and those accidents don't happen. And for the majority of the time, the vast majority of the time, they are treated pretty well. Okay, they don't care about them the way you and I might do, but the guys I've seen collecting and delivering, they're doing a job and they try to do it fairly well. They've been pretty professional about it, so I think the easy criticism where everybody rants at the couriers is just completely unwarranted. And like I say, people really don't like it when the conversation turns to, well, exactly how did you package that in? And it comes down to that thing as well, that some people believe that chucking a guitar in a hard case should equal it gets there. Well, hard case is probably the worst thing you can package your guitar in to send it with a courier, because most hard cases have nowhere near adequate buffer room, what I would call buffer zones, to absorb energy impact. Most of them are not snug fitting at all, and the guitar anyway can move around, shifting its energy and weight inside the thing. So it's usually, the vast majority of the time, a hard case just adds destructive inertia or destructive mass to the package, and it increases, not decreases, the chances of it breaking should it fall on its end out of the van onto the floor. So I recommend most of the time, except in very rare circumstances, most of the time I recommend that people don't send guitars to me in hard cases. I'd rather they didn't, and I advise them how to package them minus case, with a great chance of it getting there successfully, and that's what I aim to do, and it keeps the prices down. But I think more importantly, when you take the case, it's a bit like taking somebody out of their Volvo and putting them, when you take a guitar out of the hard case, or you get the owner to take the guitar out of the hard case and think about sending it naked, then they start having to think about what it takes to protect it, and until that point, very often they don't. And it's like that person in Volvo story, where they just don't think about safety because they're packaged away neatly in their tin can. Let's push this action down a bit. Am I going the right way or the wrong way? In, down. Sorry, the radio, I forgot to turn the radio down, so it's shouting away in our ears.
And seriously, do you think we don't realise that this is just an attempt by them and the rest of the cult to try and reverse the decision, something which they've been doing since, 10 o'clock on the morning of the result?
Well, maybe so, but, well, aren't they entitled to do that then?
No. Why not? Because it's undermining democracy.
Undermining democracy?
Surely, if you make a case for a vote, and then most people are in favour of having another vote, then that is democratic.
I don't believe they are.
No, but if they were.
I don't believe they are. Look, it's very easy.
Such a great get out. But what if they were? Wouldn't it be democratic? If people were in favour of having another vote, wouldn't that be democratic? But I don't believe they are. But what if they were? But I don't believe they are.
Cannot do that. I disagree with you absolutely and entirely, because it's very easy to promote the perception that there is the demand when there isn't really the demand. If you were to actually go out in the street with a camera crew and ask random people, optimal, but the majority of people are just like, look, we've done this and we walk away.
I agree with you. I think you're right. I don't get the sense that
No, you're
people
wrong.
do want it.
When you come on and just repeat the same old mantra.
But they're entitled to. It's a free country.
Okay, let's check it through. All things on rollers, good. Action down here, very low. Well, low, 1.5.
They just will not show
But they do passionately, just like you do.
Okay, right, but if they're not doing it, I wouldn't have said it's cool.
And then I wouldn't be talking to him.
Anyway, that's the point that I was going to make.
Okay, we're good.
You know, it's the only hope that we can possibly have is to reverse.
That's the end of this video.
There should not be a stay option at all because we've done it and we want to get out. And the more this drags on, the more people do want to get out. So these people just need to accept it.
Well, but if you're so sure of
So
that,
wrong.
then what's the harm in having another vote?
Well, therein lies neurolinguistic programming, exactly. Starting to say things like that is like blackmail, isn't it? Almost.
It's just a simple question.
We're done. Thank you for sticking with me. Fret leveling done. Raise the Titanic, raise the pickups here.
What's the harm?
We'll leave that screw off because, pardon me, we'll leave off that screw because there's no point in having it choking off the note. It's just pointless.
There was a comment at the end of QI once when Steve McFarlane into the programme.
Lovely.
With a big smile
There we go. Done. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Ready to go.
besides the
Mwah.
app.